Yeah, I walked in and I saw all these Hunter Thompson things. I felt automatically like, okay, well, this guy can't be a complete disaster. And then I walked down the hall, and there's Hunter wearing a hat that I gave him.
Oh, that hat with the gun?
Yeah, the one where he's in a cockpit, it looks like.
Yeah.
That's
You
a
gave him
dog
that
hair
hat?
hat.
Oh,
That's
wow.
dog hair.
It's made out of dog hair?
Yeah. And
Whoa.
he got such a kick out of it because when it rains on you or snows on you like it would in Woody Creek, you come in the house and you smell like a wet dog. And he loved like doing that to people. The people go, what in the hell? Like, oh, my dog. You know, that's the dog right there.
Yeah.
Oh, so this is, are you filming this too? This is
Yeah.
whatever you do?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, there he is. There's that dog head. It had like big, like tie things. You could tie it under your chin.
What year was this?
This is, oh, wow, look at that one. Oof.
Lawyers, Guns, and Money.
Yeah, those are later ones. Yeah, he didn't
Yeah.
have scopes for a long time.
That was, he had hearing protection then too. He was learning.
Well,
No.
we're all
Really?
learning something about.
Maybe.
What, that one there?
Is 86?
With the dog?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably, yeah, it was earlier. Blind, blind bat, where's that? That's funny. It's it's a historic piece, I guess.
When did you meet him?
I met him, let me drink your magic coffee here. Whose coffee is this?
Laird
Hamilton's
Hamilton's.
magic
Laird
coffee.
Hamilton's Superfoods.
I met him, it was one of those years, maybe it was after my first real year on Saturday Night Live, maybe it was 1977, like the spring, summer of 77. I was asked by Lorne Michaels, the producer of Saturday Night Live, if I had to go to, our season had ended, I'd gone to California. And he asked if I would drive his Volkswagen convertible, Bug, back cross country for him. I'm like, yeah, sure. Well, you know, a week or two later, he was like, where's my car? I'm like, you can give me a time limit, you know. I visited people on the way, so I made some stops. I visited my friend John Thompson in Reno, biggest little city in the world, and we were, you know, threw our cups out the roof and stuff like that. Had a really nice time there. And then I wanted to go to Aspen. I'd never been to Aspen before. And so I went to Aspen and stayed at the Jerome Hotel. I can talk like this because this show is like endless, right?
Yeah.
So, went to the Jerome Hotel, which was like the place to go back then. And it was off season, which is the best time of year to go to any resort town. It's like when all the tourists are gone and the citizens regain control of their town for a while.
Yeah.
So the Jerome Hotel, which would have been full of like knucklehead skiers from anywhere, was only full of like the people that worked the town, that lived in the town. And they took over the bar, and they took over the swimming pool, which was outside. So I was there, and it was just, I remember being there, and they were like beautiful girls and this really funny guy. And I didn't know who he was. And we just had the most fun, you know, making girls laugh. That's kind of what, you know, may or may not have been the reason I was brought here. But, you know, that's, so we just had the most fun doing it. And then we had this sort of episode where, you know, we did an escape act, and it had, you know, consequences in it. I started talking about an escape act, underwater escape act, and I felt like I could do it. He said, you really think you could escape underwater?
Oh no.
And I said, yeah, I think I could do it. I think I could do it because you just, so we agreed to, I agreed to be a subject. And you have to know, I did not know who this guy was. I just thought he was like a funny guy, you know? So, and we were like showing off for girls and stuff and being stupid. And it was fun. We were just having fun. So I was tied with socks to a lawn chair and lowered into the pool. But just before we went, I said, hey, just in case I want to take a breath while I'm untying my sock knots, I would move me over here to where it's like 6 feet, you know. So if I have to stand up, you know,
Right, you're not
I
gonna
can take a breath and go back down and continue
Right.
my untying, you know. So I went in and, you know, I was untying, and the guy could tie some knots, you know, like, even with socks. So after a little bit, I thought earlier, I was like, you know, maybe I'll just take a quick breath and go back down. Well, I stood up. Well, Try it, Joe. Try to
Stand in a
lash
chair.
yourself to a chair and try to stand up.
Yeah, it's hard.
Well, I'm I'm a little over 6 feet, but if you're tied to a chair, you don't get to fully extend
Right.
your calves any more than that. So tied to a chair, I'm only like 5'8"
You couldn't get out of the water.
or something like that, and it was funny to see like that camera shot of like there are people up there, and I can't reach them or speak to them because I'm still underwater. So that's when I started to work more feverishly on the knots, and I kind of was going, hey, this is,
Yeah.
I'm kind of leaning with my head like, push me down to 5 feet instead of 6 feet, so. But he was strong enough, and because I was buoyant in the water, he just picked up the chair out of the water, so I lived through it. But it was a funny way to meet someone, and the next day I found out that this was Hunter S. Johnson.
He never asked him his name?
No. He never asked me my name. I don't know that he knew who I was either, I think he thought I was just a funny guy, and we were kind of like holding court and being funny.
You played him.
I did play him.
Yeah, we were talking about it before. I loved it. With
Right.
Buffalo Roam.
Yeah, in the Buffalo Room.
Was that weird to play your friend?
There's a lot of responsibility,
Yeah.
and it was any actor that has to play either a living person, especially a living person, or a famous person, has a real responsibility to that person. You can't just be that person for 90 minutes. You have to realize that person was that person for 60 some odd years or 70, or however many years the person was. You've got to try to get all that into your hour and a half or 2 hours. You've got to try to take in as much as you can so you're not lying. At least you're doing the best you can to say, this is who I think he was. This is who I think that person was. She was. He was.
Did you run any of it by him? Did you try to talk to him as him?
Well, he was living in the guest house.
So you were around him all the time?
Yeah. So I would go to work, and I would come home, and then we would stay up, and sort of just an hour or so before, maybe an hour and a half before, 2 hours before dawn, he'd have a NytePill and scotch in a hot tub, and then go to sleep. And then I had to get about 90 minutes, and then the Teamster was knocking on the window saying, Bill! Billy! And then I'd have to go to work. That's what it was like while we were shooting the movie.
Wow.
And he appears in the movie briefly. I can't remember all of it, but he appears in the movie briefly. And we did, together we wrote a scene. I was always constantly changing. John Kay wrote the script, but I was always playing with it, because I was always being informed more, And that's what I did anyway. I just pretty much, I felt the freedom to change anything. But we did write a scene. Hunter and I wrote a scene that was late in the movie. Pardon me. They gave me these beautiful, massive things.
Cough drops?
Yeah. Well,
No, thank you.
yeah, so he was in on a lot of it, and the editing of it. You can secretly say that too, and the it was a lot of. There was a lot. He was really involved.
Very nice.
So.
So you're saying he wrote a scene? You guys wrote a scene?
Yeah, we
together?
wrote a scene together, yeah, which was encountering Nixon in a urinal, because he did have a moment with Nixon where
Yes.
you
In the
probably
limo.
know that. Remember, yeah,
Yeah,
and he was told he could not speak politics; they could only talk NFL football,
yeah.
which Nixon was rather, knowledgeable about. And
Yeah.
Hunter copped to it, like, yeah, the guy really studied it. And George Allen, it's in the book, but.
Yeah.
Nixon even designed a play that he gave to George Allen, who was the coach of the Washington Redskins back then, and they lost like 10 yards or something on the play, but Allen actually ran the play, It's
Wow.
a split. Yeah.
How many more things have they discovered in the East River?
They haven't told me, but there is, I mentioned last time, a research vessel that was out there. And in this business, if someone makes a discovery on my property that's significant, they don't talk about it. They don't want anybody to know about it. But there was a discovery made, not by Dirty Water Don, or Don. He's still out there, and he's found all kinds of stuff.
He posted on his Instagram stuff that he does find. And he's found it in the exact same place that you were told
Yep.
that the museum dumped it off.
Yep. And I posted a letter, or part of that report, that I was hoping that if somebody, I like people to think, here's where it's located, okay? Here's where it was dumped. And it said at the same point where they dumped it, where AM&H dumped it, is where the New York City hospital dumped their stuff. How hard would it be to go to the hospital and go, look at your records and tell me where you used to dump stuff in the 1940s? Just find out, just ask them. AM&H ain't gonna tell us.
Right, but if you know the location where Dirty Water Don found that stuff, it's got to be in there, right?
Oh, it's in there.
Can you go to his Instagram, Jamie? So,
No, it's in
how
there.
many different things has he recovered so far?
I think he's
There's at
found
least 2.
mammoth and bison and jawbone. It could be a horse. I haven't seen any of it with my own eyes. I haven't.
And how much did they supposedly dump in that river?
50 tons.
That is so crazy.
And here's what I was going to tell you. Someone with a research vessel with side scanning sonar and all that stuff apparently found something, found a mound in the river. It's like 100, Drew probably knows better than me, 100 feet long, 40 feet high. Whoa. 60 feet wide. Now, that wouldn't be 50 tons, but it could be a whole bunch of other stuff. And that's why the report said this will be a significant challenge to future archaeologists. This was written in 49, to future archaeologists. And I'm going, wait, archaeologists are human things. We're talking about paleontology, which is bone thing. But AM&H is the one that calls it archaeological exploration.
So do they have human bones as well?
Hypothetically.
So hypothetically, on your property, they found human bones too, and just dumped them in the river?
If you,
Why would they do that?
why don't they come clean with the saber-toothed tigers?
What do you mean by come clean with the saber-toothed tigers?
Well, the experts out there will tell you that saber-toothed tigers weren't found in Alaska.
But you have found saber-toothed tiger skulls.
Well, so have they. I have a correspondence posted recently, 2 pages. It's filled with unbelievable things that, yeah, that's one.
That's Dirty Water Don says that this is the lower jawbone to a steppe bison.
Yep.
He's got some other stuff in there too, right, Jamie? Like maybe a tusk or something, some other things?
Yep.
Yeah, look at that bone. Steppe bison, tibia. So what are you saying though? Why would they dump off human remains?
They say that, well, the letter says we have yet to find any human remains, but we found spear tips. Well, we found mammoth bones with spear tips in them. We found that stuff.
Do you have a photo of a mammoth bone with a spear tip in it?
Yeah, my daughter
Where's
pulled
that?
up a big mammoth tip bone and it's got a spear.
Where's that?
Bone Rush, Alaska. I mean,
No, but where's it? Where can we see that image?
on my page.
Oh, on your page. You have that thing with the spear tip still in it?
Spear tips out, but we have the bone. We have a couple bones like that, Joe.
Why'd you take it out?
In fact, I posted a picture of 12, or I think it's around 12 spear points that were sent to AM&H. It disappeared. Shit disappeared.
Well, you know what? I was talking to a guy the other day about this, and he was saying that he thinks what happens is, Dan Richards, that it goes to wealthy people.
Oh, yeah.
The wealthy people offer them a bunch of money, wealthy donors. They want to get it for their collection, and he was talking about a bunch of different stuff that goes missing.
I have a letter I just posted here just in case we wanted to talk about it, from Childs Frick, who was head of AMNH back when this was all going on. His dad was Henry Frick. His dad was the most hated man in America for a while for killing his people. He was a steel guy, steel industry founder.
Killing his workers?
Yeah, they wanted overtime pay, and they didn't want to work so hard. And he brought in the gang, those hired thugs, the Pinkertons or whoever it was.
They murdered people?
I don't know how many they killed of his guys. He was ruthless. Henry Frick was ruthless, and his kid Childs was the one that set this deal up, this tripartite agreement, which is also included in this letter, about AMNH's responsibility with these bones was to just take those of scientific value and do a report on every one they took. They took over 40 years. They took tons and tons and tons of them. Did no reporting, nothing. Dumped 50 tons in the river because they didn't have a place to store them, apparently. They didn't care.
But why would they dump human bones? Because I would think that would be very valuable. You're saying archaeology, so you think it's just spear tips and shit like that?
They found human bones. I'm willing to say that. Yeah, they found them.
It would also be very confusing if you found Alaskan spear tips in the East River. That would be the confusing thing for archaeologists, I would imagine. They're saying too, kind of, right?
Well, you find a bone with a spear tip in it, or a bone that obviously had a spear tip in it because of the way it's broken. I mean, I have a baby mammoth hip bone that is like that,
Yeah.
identified by a reputable paleontologist.
But here's just a for instance, I stumbled across a New York Times article talking about
Unearthing the secret of New York's mass graves.
back from since the 19th century, hiring prisoners for 50 cents an hour. They only get paid to move mass graves. There would have been no markings of who was what.
Oh, so they dumped that in the river too?
Look where it is. I mean,
They just dumped the bodies in the river. How gross.
they didn't use coffins until recently.
That's nuts. What about vampires?
Well, I mean, they put them in stuff, a real nice box.
Come on, man. Did you see Dracula? Yeah. People are gross. You know, they've been throwing things in that river forever. You know, like most of the world. You go around rivers in most of the industrialized world, those rivers are disgusting.
Well, our state legislature, I told you last time I was going to go political on this. I've got no desire to litigate this thing. Litigation just takes a long time. Politically, I told you last time, we're going to go this route. And I have a letter I just posted from the Alaska State Legislature to AMNH to return the bones from the Senate majority. The guy that wrote that's a fellow by the name of Click Bishop, and he was the Senate president signed it with him. But Click is a good, honest, decent gold mining legislator. He was termed out this time. He decided not to run again because I suspect he'll run for governor here, and he'll probably win in a couple years. And Click is one of those guys that wants the bone back. We met with him and his chief of staff, the president of the university, and the museum guys and some other state legislators. And we want them back.
This is very interesting. We understand there are unopened crates sitting in storage in New York. They present an opportunity for further scientific discovery in fields such as paleontology, ecology, and anthropology. Therefore, facilitating the return of this collection is crucial to ensure access for researchers, educators, and students within Alaska, thereby advancing scientific knowledge and understanding of the state's natural history. There are researchers in Alaska ready and waiting to open these crates that have been collecting dust in your basement. Yeah. Get at it. Give up the boxes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
bring them home.
Bring them home.
Well, I made the offer to build a research facility, store everything. We'll bring them all back here. The scientists can have access to them, but the bones are not leaving Alaska. They're not leaving Alaska.
You don't trust them anymore.
Fuck no.
Why would you?
Why would I?
Why would you?
I don't.
You shouldn't.
And I get a lot of people, oh, I need a mammoth bone for our studies. You're just trying to collect something.
Yeah, fuck off. I'll
Come on
never
up.
get it back.
Come on up and find it.
Yeah.
You know, come find them. They're all over the place.
That's what's nuts is that you keep finding them. Like, what was that event like that led so many bodies to be in this small area? Because you said it's only like 5 acres or something like that?
2.1.
2.1.
Yeah, we had maybe another 0.1.
But there's another area that you said that's a little larger?
Yes, downstream makes this one look like a piker.
How big is that area?
It's a mile long.
Whoa.
This is
And
only
you're
little.
finding them there too?
Oh yeah.
So this main area where you're pulling most of this stuff is only 2.1 acres?
Yep.
That's crazy. That is, what a dump of bodies it must have been.
Yeah, it was incredible. So when we started back down at the mouth and headed up the left limit, we hit some fairly modern day drift mines on that side until we got farther up. And we went all the way up to where we had been set up before, and we crossed back over, tracing this back channel, because that's where the gold was. We didn't get maybe 50 feet, and we finding these steel tubes sticking out of the ground. Well, that's how they used to melt permafrost, but this is virgin ground and never been mined. So we kept going, and we found some pretty significant things over there. And we're on the hunt.
I mean, imagine what the event must have looked like to lead all those bodies in one small area. I mean, it only makes sense that that was a mass extinction event, right? Am I wrong?
It went over thousands of years because we dated anywhere from 40,000-year-old bones to 12,000-year-old bones in that deposit. Wow.
So everything kept dying there. So it might have been multiple events.
Yeah, might have been.
Well, that was one of the things they thought about the Younger Giants impact theory, right? They think there was multiple times where that happened. And then I wonder what the population density was like of animals back then, too. Because you do have these enormous animals that are very difficult for predators to hunt, and they manage to get into large numbers and they can defend themselves. But if you have a large population of woolly mammoths, and bisons, and steppe bisons, and fucking saber-toothed tigers up there, what the fuck did that look like? Like, if you're finding that many bones, imagine going back in time 30,000 years ago and just being a fly on the wall and seeing what life was like back then.
Well, we can't seem to find anybody that's willing to come up there and study it. You know, I've made all these offers,
Do you
generous
think it's because
offers.
of the restrictions? Because they're scared that you're going to own everything and you're going to...
Well, the two of the employees at AM&H happened to have a conversation with somebody that is related to the state of Alaska or employed by the state of Alaska, where they said, we don't want the bones to get into Reeves's hands because they'll lose, the scientific community will no longer have access to them. And they're real valuable, and we think he's going to sell them. Now, the people that he said that to was with some legislature, university employees. And where we were at, you couldn't even count the fucking number of tusks. And so
Here, that's such an ignorant thing to say. Because if you're going to sell them, you already have way more than you need to sell.
we're not there to sell tusks. I want to figure out, I'm goofball this way, what the fuck happened? Why did 65% of the world's megafauna, or North Americans, why did it go all extinct all at once?
Yeah,
What the fuck?
yeah.
And they have in that collection that they didn't dump in the river. And my collection was, let's say it's a 2,000 square foot or 2,000 piece jigsaw puzzle. I got 42 pieces over here. They got the rest. I'm not going to solve anything with 42 pieces. I want it all. Put it all back in Alaska. Let the state of Alaska study the fuck out of it. And we will tell you how the extinction event happened. It's been, paleontologists know that. But they don't have money. They don't really want to put up with the shit they have to do to get it. You know how hard it is to dig an ice, permafrost?
Wow, I see those hoses you use.
Yeah, but I'm not digging it, I'm thawing it.
Right.
Take a scalp. You know how the paleontologists see them on TV with the little scalpel, toothbrush and shit. That don't fly around there. You gotta melt it and get it the hell out of there. That's people criticize for how we do it. But if we don't do it, we don't get it. And we're not going to use mechanical equipment on it because I don't want to destroy it.
And that's the problem that I see with all this Doge stuff.
Right.
Because everybody should be celebrating that we've found a way to cut out fraud and waste.
Yeah.
If you pay taxes and you don't like that you have to pay so much in taxes, and then you find out that there's significant fraud and waste that's been exposed, you should be celebrating it. This shouldn't be, oh no, the wrong people found this fact and now it's a bad thing.
Yes.
And then there's the fucking propaganda, the mindfuck of calling it USAID
Yeah.
instead of the United States Agency for International Development. It sounds like it's feeding hungry people.
Right.
People are going to starve, Elon. This is horrible. And then you find out that actually it's like $250 million for transgender animal studies. Like,
Yeah,
it's
they're
like,
literally mutilating animals.
yes.
Mu-
Yes.
Mutilating animals in demented studies
Yes.
that are like the worst thing you could possibly imagine from a horror show.
The beagle one. The beagle puppy
Hor-
one.
horrific,
Yeah,
yeah.
where they covered their head in a basket and put fleas on their heads so they'd eat them alive.
Yeah.
And then they studied these beagles and then killed them. Like, what are you going to learn from that? That's good for anybody.
Yeah. There's some psychotic stuff that happens. So, yeah. I mean I guess the real threat here is to the bureaucracy. So, like, you probably saw, like, you know, let's say like Trump is a threat to our democracy, which is ironic since he was elected with the majority of the popular vote. They started saying I was a threat to democracy. But if you just replace threat to democracy with threat to bureaucracy, it makes total sense.
Right.
So, I mean, the reality is that our elected officials have very little power relative to the bureaucracy until Doge. So Doge is a threat to the bureaucracy. It's the first threat to the bureaucracy. And normally the bureaucracy eats revolutions for breakfast. This is the first time that they're not. That the revolution might actually succeed. That we can restore power to the people instead of power to the bureaucracy.
Now, the size of it,
Yeah.
was when you guys first started investigating it, when you first get in, how much of it was shocking? Like this, just the size of it all.
Well, the size of it all, the small decisions result in multi-billion-dollar outcomes. So, you know, we'd see, there was a case where we saw one person was getting $1.9 billion sent to their NGO, which basically got formed about a year ago and had no prior, no prior activity. So they just stand up an NGO. The whole NGO thing is a nightmare. And it's a misnomer because if you have a government-funded, non-governmental organization, you're simply a government-funded organization. It's an oxymoron.
Right. It's a loophole.
Yes. It basically, the government-funded NGOs are a way to do things that would be illegal if they were the government, but are somehow made legal if it's sent to a so-called nonprofit. But these nonprofits are then used to, people cash out these nonprofits. They become very wealthy through nonprofits. They pay themselves enormous sums through these nonprofits.
It's so insane that that's been going on for so long.
It's a gigantic scam, like one of the biggest, maybe the biggest scam ever.
And how many NGOs?
I think there's a total number of NGOs, probably millions, but in terms of large NGOs, tens of thousands. I mean, it's actually kind of a hack to the system, where someone can get an NGO stood up for a fairly small amount of money. Like George Soros was really good at this. Like George Soros is like a system hacker. Like he figured out how to hack the system. He's a genius at arbitrage. I mean, these days he's pretty old, but a genius at arbitrage. So he figured out that you could leverage a small amount of money to create a nonprofit, then lobby the politicians to send a ton of money to that nonprofit, so you can take what might be, a $10 million donation to a nonprofit to create a nonprofit and leverage that into $1 billion NGO. A nonprofit is a weird word. It's just a non-governmental organization. And then the government continues to fund that every year. And it'll have a nice sounding name, like Institute for Peace or something like that. But really, it's a graph machine.
And what are their requirements with that money? What do they have to do?
Just really no requirements at all.
So they just get grants and the government just assumes that they're doing good work.
I think a lot of people in the government know that they're not doing good work. But it's a giant graph machine. I mean,
But surely
people online are like unpacking this.
Right.
You know,
It almost seems fake. Like when you're seeing how we were covering this article that said 55,000 Democrat NGOs were discovered that had been contributing to campaigns and moving things around and pushing propaganda, and they were all connected. And they found it through AI. That you have to go through steps and steps and steps to figure out where the money's coming from. Oh, it's all funneling down to this group, and this group does that. Yeah, it's a giant propaganda machine, a giant regime change machine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean.
But does it do some good as well?
It does some good. So it's like it's not like 0% good. If it was really 0% good, it'd be much easier to detect. So there's going to be some percent good that they add in there, but it's like it might be 5% or 10% good, but 95% not.
So is there a way to audit all this stuff and find out, oh, these people are actually just sending food to poor people. These people are actually just helping people with water in third world countries. There's a way to do that and keep funding those.
Yeah, I mean, we have continued to fund things that appear to be legitimate, even with the flimsiest, if there's even the flimsiest excuse. Like, I just say, like, send me a picture of the thing. Like, you could literally have AI generate the picture, but if you're not even willing to try to trick me, then we're like not going to send the money, okay?
So what restrictions were put on? There was something set aside, like medicine, and what was set aside? There wasn't
there was
gonna be a freeze on.
work for like Ebola prevention. I actually don't even know if this work is even effective. It may or may not be. Like it could be the kind of thing where you sort of fund Ebola prevention, but it turns out that actually you're funding a lab that develops new Ebola virus, recipes or something,
Yeah.
And they claim it's Ebola prevention, but it's actually Ebola creation. So some of these things, I don't know. I mean, just, but it just seems like we shouldn't be sending taxpayer money to dubious enterprises overseas.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And why are we doing it? Like, what exactly is the reason? Is it because we want to make friends with these people so the Chinese don't take over, the Russians don't take over? Okay, how much of that is like a good thing? How much of that is smart to do? And how much is a grift? And without any sort of oversight, which has really been going on for so long, they've just had free run.
Yeah. Well, also we just have a real issue with the budget deficit. It's gigantic. So, like if all things being equal, if we didn't have a gigantic budget deficit where interest payments, the interest on the national debt exceeds the Defense Department budget, which is truly astounding, which means so we're paying over $1 trillion of interest on the national debt, then okay, we would have more room for wasting money, basically. But when we're spending so much money that the country's going bankrupt, then we really need to stop spending money unless we're sure it is good value.
So essentially, we're like a poorly managed business with an unlimited credit line that is off the rails.
Absolutely.
And if you were a person like you are, who comes in and takes over businesses and straightens them out, that's exactly what you're doing.
I mean, most of the time I create businesses from scratch. Like Twitter was the case where, I kind of bought a company that was, I kind of knew it was a hairball.
Well, you came in at Tesla in the beginning, but they were already doing something, right?
No, Tesla did not exist in any meaningful form. There were no employees. J.B. Straubel and I joined 3 other people. There was no car, there was no nothing.
So it wasn't even a prototype yet?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought it was a prototype already.
No. There weren't even any employees.
Oh. Wasn't it that's a funny narrative. People like to say that you didn't even create Tesla then.
Yeah, that's wrong.
So if you're handling the government like a business, you're going to have to go through all of these departments and do the exact same thing that you're doing with USA. So how does that scale up? Like, how many people do you need to do something like that?
Well, we started off with about 40 people, maybe 100 people, and we're really just going through doing very basic things here. It's as bad as Twitter was, the federal government is much worse. So, in the case of Twitter, it wasn't a profitable company. It was like basically a break-even company, but at least it was break-even, and it had to pass an audit. The federal government is not break-even. It's literally losing $2 trillion a year, and it does not pass its audits. It fails its own audits. So, there's a case where, like Senator Collins was telling me about how she gave the Navy $12 billion for more submarines, got no extra submarines, and then held a hearing to say where'd the $12 billion go, and they were like, we don't know. That was it. Basically, stuff is so crazy. It's like only the federal government can get away with this level of waste. It's mostly waste. It's mostly not fraud. It's mostly waste. It's mostly just ridiculous things happening.
Because they've been able to do it this way for so long. They've become accustomed to it.
Yeah, it's like Milton Friedman said, money is most poorly spent when you're spending someone else's money on people you don't know. How much are you going to care?
Right.
And that's the federal government. So they're spending someone else's money on people they don't know.
Now imagine any other business that was this badly run
It would be
that
dead.
complains when you want to check the books and audit it and go through all the decisions that have been made and go through all the ledgers and
Yeah.
what did you do?
Well, the people receiving the money want to keep receiving the money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah. So, but, the reason I'm putting so much effort into this is that I think it is a very dire situation. It's not it's not optional, basically. So, America's going bankrupt, so that just can't happen.
It's just bizarre to me that some people aren't willing to look at it correctly. They're not willing to see how much chaos this is, how much waste and fraud there is, how much could be trimmed, and how much. Just because people have jobs doing bullshit doesn't mean your tax dollar should pay for this bullshit.
Yes. We found just with a basic search of the Social Security database that there were 20 million dead people marked as alive.
But were they getting money?
Some of them are getting money.
What percentage of them?
It isn't clear. We're actually trying to run this grant. I was trying to get an answer right before the show. What it looks like is that most of the fraud is not coming from Social Security payments directly, but because they're marked as alive in the Social Security database, that they can get disability, unemployment, sort of fake medical payments, and other things because they're marked as alive in the Social Security database. So it looks like it's a bank. The fraud is a bank shot, essentially. They bank shot into Social Security. They just do an "Are you alive?" check, and then get fraudulent payments from every other part of the government.
Oh.
Yeah. And this exploits the fundamental weakness in the government is that the various government databases, they don't talk to each other. They talk to each other very poorly in a very limited way. So the way that the system gets exploited is by taking advantage of the poor communication between the various databases in the government. To give you an example of what's happening, say, Treasury, which is improving rapidly. The main payments computer is called PAM, Payment Accounts Master Database, or something like that. But everyone calls it PAM. That's responsible for almost $5 trillion payments a year, roughly $1 billion an hour. And when we came there, we're looking at this payment. It's like the payments have no. You could put a payment through with no payment categorization code, and no description on the payment, like basically untraceable blank checks. This is the kind of thing that if it was done as a public company, the company would be immediately delisted and the executive team would be thrown in prison. But this is just normal at the government. So we said, okay, our recommendation to the Treasury and the Federal Reserve is like, we need to make the payment categorization codes mandatory, not optional, and there needs to be an explanation. We're not judging the quality of the explanation, but there should be some explanation for what this payment is for above nothing. That's a radical change to the system that is being implemented now. My guess is that probably saves $100 billion a year.
Jesus Christ.
That's
Where
well, I
was
might
that money going?
rough order of magnitude.
Where
Like,
was that money going?
well, so this is where you get into the sort of gray boundary between waste and fraud. If money is sent to a person or organization from the government, and you didn't really deserve it, but the government still sent it to you, is that waste or fraud?
Right.
So, I mean, there's a lot of payments where someone just approved the payment, but then that payment officer changed jobs or retired or died, and the payments just keep going. You know, it's like if you forget to pay your gym membership or something like that.
Right.
Now imagine it's not the gym membership. You said your gym membership's $20 billion a year or something, you know. But they forgot to turn it off. That's happening at scale in the government.
Jesus
It's totally nuts,
Christ,
is what I'm
that's
saying.
so insane.
Yes, it's totally insane. So
What did you expect when you went in? Did you
I
expect
thought
it would be like
bad.
this?
I thought it would be bad, but I did not think it would be as bad as this. I mean, look, the good news is that it's a target-rich environment for saving money. It's not like if it was a very well-run ship, if it was very efficient, it would be hard to improve. But it's not efficient, so therefore it is actually relatively easy to improve. Let's just say it's not rocket science. You know, I know rocket science. So it's a lot of mundane things. And some of the things are like so crazy that we didn't even know to ask about that, because we just assumed, like, you know, payments out of the Treasury computer would have a payment categorization code, and they would have some explanatory note saying what the payment's for. The idea that it would be just untraceable blank checks didn't occur to us at first.
Jesus.
So, anyway, just
So is that one of the
Yeah.
things that accounts to this? There's this something trillion dollars that's kind of, they don't know where it went. They don't know.
I think that's probably a cumulative number.
Yes.
So, yeah, but yeah, if you add up, it's
Do you remember that story, Jamie?
yeah.
What was the story? Yeah, it was spent on legitimate things. Don't worry, but we don't know what if we spent it on.
Well, I mean, how do you know? Obviously, one cannot say it was spent legitimately if they don't know what it was spent on. That doesn't make any sense.
This is such a fascinating time, because with this setup, the way it is right now, with Trump back in, after all that happened to him, and with you there, and with RFK Jr. and Tulsi and Kash Patel, it's like, this is a wild time to find out what's really going on. That's like never happened before. This is nothing like the first term.
No.
Like the first term, he had a bunch of neocons in the cabinet, and there's a bunch
Yeah.
of shady people that he didn't know, and he had to appoint all these different people. Maybe he got some bad picks. Now he's had 4 years to stew on it.
Right.
And with you guys all going through this, we're getting an understanding of the government that we've literally never had before.
Yeah, this is a revolutionary cabinet, and maybe the most revolutionary cabinet since the first revolution.
The 180,000, though, a lot of them It's just because they're trying to find a place, but they're not destitute. A lot of these people are people that had some money. You know, who
Yeah.
knows what's going to happen with insurance, right?
Right, but
'Cause
see, that's the problem.
unfortunately, the fire insurance issue in Los Angeles is kind of insane.
It's terrible.
Where, you know, we were talking in the lobby before. I was evacuated 3 times when I lived in LA. 2 of my neighbors lost their homes. You know, and watching those folks cry in front of the rubble
Yeah.
where they lived, it's just horrible. You know, but they kept their lives, and you know, and this was 2018, and you know, they rebuilt some of them. Two of the houses are still gone in my old neighborhood. They never rebuilt.
Sorry to hear about that.
They just pulled out. They just like, what am I going to do? They lose everything. I mean, Mel Gibson lost books from the 1600s. You know, Mel is a very religious man, and he
Yeah.
collects like these ancient, irreplaceable books.
Wow.
And then, you know, of course, the loss of lives is horrifying. That issue is an issue that has plagued LA and California forever. So a big point of contention during the election and even during the first Trump administration was the use of water. And that water was being funneled into the Pacific Ocean. And now, apparently, you could tell me more. You probably know more than I do. What has been done about that water? Because it seems like Trump has changed that.
Well, I think what Trump did a good job of, first of all, I'm grateful for the fact that he flew out, had a meeting, and I'm grateful. And you know, I have my differences at time to time on some issues with him, but he sat down and he was forceful in a very strong way of holding the elected officials accountable, like get the people back in their homes now. So the fact that in this tragedy we've got a president who's also a builder, who understands what needs to be done, I think is great. And I hope he continues to hold all the elected officials accountable. He can make a big difference, and we need it. On the water issue, listen, I headed up Department of Water and Power, like I said, for 10 years. I have a pretty good understanding of the water issues. What's happening in the north really has not as much of an impact as happening down in Southern California in terms of how the water gets transferred around. It doesn't mean we should be pouring water into the ocean. We should not be. We should be doing a lot of things. We should be collecting water. We should be holding water. We should be recycling water. We should be doing a lot of things. What happened in Los Angeles, which is just close to negligence, if not negligence, Joe, the fire hydrants ran out.
Yeah.
We evacuated our home, and we're in Brentwood, so you know the area. We're 15 minutes from the Palisades where the fire started. And it was my birthday. We were having family dinner. From the second floor, we saw the flames. We said, we're going to have to get out of here. The power went off. We said, we're out. Gathered the family. We moved down to a home we have in Newport Beach. And I get a call from one of my senior executives who's sort of embedded in with the fire command post. And my heart dropped. He said, we just lost your daughter's home. And I said, oh my God, Banyan, how the hell did that happen, you know? He said, you can't believe it. The hoses ran dry. And the whole neighborhood went up. And I was so angry that Fox 11, the local Fox station, was on with Alex Michelson. And I texted him because they were reporting live. This is about 10:30 at night. I said, are you getting reports that they've run out of water? He said, not at all. And I said, you need to report this. He said, you want to come on live? I said, yeah, hook me up. And I went on. He couldn't believe it. And some of the media was trying to spin it
I saw that.
like it's not true.
Yeah. And then they went right to the firemen.
Went right to the firemen, right?
Yeah.
The firemen said, yeah, we're standing there, empty hoses. How in God's name, the second largest city in the country, can you have a water system that runs out of water in a fire? And you knew you knew this was coming, right? They gave warnings of catastrophic winds. The reservoir's empty, over, I think it was 1.7 million gallons.
I think it's 11 million.
Maybe 11 million?
Yeah.
Probably right. It's empty
Empty.
during fire season?
Yeah.
You've got brush that hasn't been cleared for 40 years. There was a whole bunch of us raising hell about that after the fire in Brentwood 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Nothing was done. The fire department wasn't pre-deployed, so there weren't engines staffed in different areas. You've got a fire department that's underfunded. You've got fire equipment that's mothballed,
And then the mayor flies to Ghana.
and the mayor's out of town.
So what should have been done, and who's responsible?
Well, I think the leadership is responsible at every level. I think the mayor's responsible for not being better prepared. I think she's certainly responsible for not staying in town. It's a lack of judgment. If you want to be a leader, the first thing you have to do is be present. I don't know what all the meetings that she had beforehand to make sure everybody was prepared, but years ago the brush should have been cleared,
Yes.
right? And if
Yeah.
you probably couldn't have prevented the fire, maybe you couldn't have prevented the fire. Only God knows.
Well, we don't
But
really
you could
know.
have mitigated it.
We don't really know the source of the fire yet, and we do know there was quite a bit of arson.
That's true. That's true. And there was a fire, to your point, there was a fire New Year's Eve from fireworks. And there's some talk that it may have been in that same area that this sparked up again. Or maybe it was another arson that went up there.
But it seemed like there were several fires that started very close to each other. It seems
Yeah.
like highly unlikely
Could be.
that there was just 3 accidents that took place at the same time as these catastrophic winds.
Could be.
But then the most sinister version of it is that somebody wanted this to happen, maybe some mentally ill person. I know they did
It's a
arrest.
sickness. Yeah.
It is a sick. Arsonists they're really sick people.
Yeah.
And it's a known psychological illness. There's a guy that they arrested that was a known arsonist, several times arrested, who had a fake fire truck and drove
saw
down.
that.
Yeah, drove down from Oregon to do who knows what.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, well,
You got to be really,
there's some
really
psychos
sick.
out there. Yeah, there's some real sick
Yeah.
people out there. There's some weird people also that enjoy watching other people lose everything. It's very strange.
Yeah.
But I guess people who feel like they have nothing and they feel like the world has screwed them over and they haven't got the breaks they deserve, they literally want
That's
to
right.
watch. And there's this entitled culture that we live in that kind of tells people that the reason why other people are successful is because they've stolen from you.
Right.
Which is just the craziest thing,
Craziest thing.
to say in America.
But it gives them an excuse.
It gives them an excuse. And it also gives them a pathway to vent their anger and instead point it productively at their own lives. Like, why am I in this position right now? What could I have done differently?
That's exactly
What
right.
personal responsibility do I have for the way I live right now?
Right.
Instead of that, it's like, no, these rich people, they fucked
Right.
you over.
That's right. They took advantage of it.
Yeah. So the water. What is the explanation for why that enormous reservoir that provides the Palisades with water was empty?
Well, the explanation that's been said is it's out of service because the cover on it needed to be repaired.
Oh, the cover.
The cover. Because, we're very sensitive in LA that bad things don't get in our water. So they have to keep all these reservoirs covered, which in general I get. I get the safety of that. But how about this? You know that you have catastrophic winds coming. Start pumping water in it because nobody gives a shit about what's in the water.
Yeah.
When you need it in your fire,
Yeah.
right?
Now, that could have been done in probably a couple of weeks.
Whatever it took.
Yeah, and it's not like we don't know. LA has fire season. I remember every year because where I used to live in Bell Canyon is, it's about 35 minutes from LA.
Right.
And it gets rough out there. It's like a lot of like big rolling hills and it gets all filled with grass. And if it
Right.
catches and the winds start whipping through those canyons, the winds in California, for people that don't know, every year we get the Santa Ana winds.
That's right.
And they're crazy.
They are
If you
crazy.
some of them were 100 miles an hour this year. That is just, if you've ever been out there for that, that's nuts. And if there's fires blowing, boy.
It's a terrible combination. I mean, the early settlers called them the devil winds. Mm-hmm. They've been there forever.
Forever,
To
yeah.
your point, they've been there forever. So just think about, had the brush been cleared, had the reservoirs been full, had the fire trucks been stationed, had there been a whole series of protocols in place, again,
We could have saved some houses.
could have saved
Saved a lot of lives.
A lot of lives, a lot of houses, a lot of jobs, a lot of pain.
A lot of pain. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just incompetence. There's no way you could say, oh, I see why they didn't do that. Oh,
Right.
I see why they didn't have the resources. Oh, it's not their fault. No, there's none of that there. No one's saying that.
That's right.
Everyone is saying it's a failure.
It's a failure because they're not equipped to deal with the leadership they needed.
Even the spin masters, even the greatest of gaslighters have nothing. There's not one person who's tried to pass the buck. I have not seen one successful person go on the air and say everything was done that could have been done. We have amazing leadership. We're really proud of them. We're really lucky we have them. Right. Not one.
You're right.
Not one.
but
That's kind of crazy.
It is kind of crazy.
Because they gaslight everything, no matter what it is. Everything's safe and effective. Everybody's fine. Everything's great. He's sharp as a tack. Everything. They gaslight the shit out of you with everything. But with this one, they're like, there's nothing you can say.
I agree with that, because the facts are the facts.
The facts are the facts.
You just can't argue around the facts.
And also, there's a thing that happens when an area bigger than Manhattan that's filled with the most liberal people. They're the most liberal. They're the most blue, no matter who. The most like compassionate, kind people that like view being a Democrat and being a liberal as being the ultimate expression of being a good person. And they're getting slapped in the face by the reality. I think the
politics have changed. I think the reality has set in, honestly, and it's unfortunate it's taken this. But the reality really has set in that you've got to have competent leadership.
Yes.
And what happened at DWP, because I was there for 13 years, 10 of which I was president, or close to 10, is the head of that department got politicized. Years ago, under Bradley and under Reardon, under Hahn, the general manager of Department of Water and Power was always somebody who came through the ranks, who was just this exceptional engineer, and that department was regarded as best in class in the country as a utility, bar none. The best financial rating, the best engineers wanted to work there. It built some of the most amazing projects in history, including Hoover Dam. So let's just start with that one. Right? Then what happened? Politics creeped into who was the general manager. That destroys an organization. This is an organization that's not in the business of being necessarily doing what's politically important at the time. It's in the business of delivering water and power. And the failure is also there. I don't understand how the current general manager of the department, I don't know what she did and didn't do, but the kind of failure that's on her desk, where the buck stops, she needs to resign. She needs to be fired, in my opinion, by the mayor, and be held accountable for whoever made bad decisions, including herself. But we're allowing this. And so the minute you allow that continues, this creep of incompetence is tolerated. And it shouldn't be tolerated, because people lost their lives, they lost their homes, right?
Well,
am I right about that?
You're 100% right. And I think you're 100% right about politics. And the problem with politics is that people want to preserve the structure that pays them. They want to preserve the entity that they're invested in, that they have their time in. They have all their connections, and this is the weird world of politics versus the world of business. And you know what's fascinating right now is we're getting a chance to see what happens when you take a business approach to the government in the White House. We're seeing right now with this whole U.S. aid thing, where they're uncovering massive amounts of corruption and waste and just a lot of weird shady shit with NGOs and where an enormous amount of money is going. And you're seeing someone look at this thing that is incredibly efficient almost by design. And instead of saying like, well, this is just how it is and this is how these politicians get funded, so let's just keep this thing going the same way it is and make some incremental changes to try to make people happy so we still get elected.
Right.
Instead of that, you're seeing a politician, a president who's coming in who can't get reelected, so he's just going ham. And he's just cleaning out everything. And people are freaking out. The same people that say we need radical change. Right. We need radical change. We've got corruption. We need radical change. Okay, well, here's your radical change. We don't need this. But you do. Yeah. The government does. They need oversight. Yeah, and they haven't had that. And because of that, you're seeing this, not just waste. You could call it waste. You must be feeling fantastic.
Many things were successful, so even if I was a little bit had a flu, many things.
You had the flu before that fight?
Yeah, for one week, like 5 days, 5 days before fight week, I was in how to say that heat, like body's warm.
Fever?
Fever,
Yeah.
fever. So yeah,
That's crazy.
that was something but every time. Maybe I'm a little bit glad for that because I'm every time trying to push my preparation too much that I'm every time like hurt myself or I'm overtrained.
Right.
So that's why I'm maybe just a little bit glad for that.
That's interesting, right? Like it's so hard because you want to prepare so hard. You're so disciplined, so driven, but you can do yourself a disservice. You can go too far, and then you don't recover enough, and then you go into the fight a little compromised.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we've seen that many times with fighters who just get so enthusiastic about their training.
Yeah, because I feel like self-confidence and still there is something what you can do better, yeah, every day. And that's my idea of the training, life idea, to go better every day, 1% better, 1% better. Even if you can't train, you can sit in a meditation and visualize how you train, how the body's working. Sometimes is the most biggest, like the biggest thing what you can do is just
Rest.
like you show me the floating.
Yes. Yeah, you need one of those, man. If all the people that I know, you need one. The sensory deprivation tank. You should get one of those.
Yeah.
Because I know you're into meditation. I know you spend a lot of time in dark rooms. That's meditation times 100.
That's right.
Oh, do you monitor your heart rate every day to see what your recovery's at, or you just go by feel?
Feeling. I did that in high altitude training in all the November in Mexico City, where is 2,300, 200
Yeah,
meters.
7,700 feet above sea level, I believe.
Yes, and there I monitor everything, like take a blood exams before, in, and after this camp, 4 weeks camp there, and man, amazing how.
Well, your endurance was incredible in that fight because that was such a high
and still
paced fight.
And still, I felt like after that flu, I felt a little bit down, but
Well, that's pretty amazing then. You must have been in insane shape before the flu. Yeah, it's
Yep.
that fine line, that balance.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you went to Mexico City. Did you know a gym up there, or did you bring your camp up there?
I was there in UFC Performance Institute there.
Oh.
There's a new one.
Nice.
And yeah, you have everything here in the Performance Institute, like regeneration, training, coaches with the pads. And so yeah, I was there especially for to work on the things what I took from the last fight with Pereira to work on the hands up a little bit, just a little bit.
A little bit. But we were talking about it in the broadcast. Your hands down sometimes has a benefit. There's a real
That's right.
advantage to it because no one sees where those punches are coming from.
Yeah.
So for the people that don't know what I'm talking about,
Not just punches.
Yes.
Movement, head movement.
Head movement was excellent.
Everything.
Your
And-
head movement was excellent.
And the feeling with the hands up is another one with with the hands down. Yeah, because this is your natural posture.
Right?
Yeah, so you spend most of the time in this, and it's about just feeling the space, feeling the. I can't explain to another person like this one because when I am in the flow, like you wanna be in the flow in the fight, some between the flow and uncomfortable, somewhere in the center. So when I achieved this attitude. That's why I don't need to keep my hands up, because this for me means, and for everybody, that means defending. I don't need to defend myself when I see everything, when I feel everything, and but like I understand in this preparation, where I did all the camp hands up, like this gives you the calm in a close distance. In a close distance, it's not so. Sometimes it's not so smart to keep
Hands down.
Hands down,
Right.
yeah.
So,
but
but
I'm
at
crazy.
range.
I'm crazy enough to go through, to be in the moment, to stress my body so much in this situation, to see every movement, every start of the movement of my opponent, that I can react before he starts. And the next level is to try to read the thinking of the opponent, what he wants to do before he do that. So
I'm grateful that you had me on MAGA State Media. Thank you for allowing me.
You had to get that out.
Because I see it all the time, all the time. Like, and it's hilarious to me in light of how much money goes to funding, like, sponsored by Pfizer. You know,
Yeah.
all of these other the audacity to accuse you, who just has people you like on your podcast, to suddenly be state media when you literally have had state media media working with the state in conjunction for a decade.
Yeah, at least, and probably a lot more longer than that.
Multiple decades.
It's just gotten really gross once. Well, Trump was just sort of like the accelerant. He was the gasoline that got thrown on the fire, so we got to see like how this thing works.
I voted for him.
Yeah, I did too.
I came
Well,
out.
openly, I endorsed him. I was like, this has got to stop. This is crazy. Also,
Yeah.
he's not what you guys said he was. He's just not.
I put a video out like the Friday before the election because I voted for him early. And I was Hillary in 2016, no one in 2020, and Trump in 2024. So, like, I don't care how people vote. People do whatever you want. I was only being honest, and it was weird to come out and say that as a comedian, because I don't think that comedians should really be political. But on the other hand, it felt dishonest because I had been so openly kind of torn about voting for him.
Well, also, if you're a comedian, you have to protect free speech.
Yeah.
There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And when it comes to this argument, the Biden administration was terrifying for free speech. They were actively attacking people that were posting truth on social media and attacking them and trying to get their posts removed, including the guy who was the one who was quoted in this book about Kamala Harris, saying that we made it difficult for her to come on the show, and they told a untrue story about having a bunch of people come down here to do a run through the set like they were ready to do it. All bullshit. That was the guy. He was the guy that was emailing Twitter and saying, how's this post, being like super aggressive, saying, why is this post still up? Oh, you mean that truthful post?
Yeah.
About vaccine injuries and side effects? What the fuck are you talking about? Like that was getting very scary.
Yeah, this is what I said in the video I made about why I voted for him. I was like, there's a couple things. I've interviewed many detransitioners. Those interviews keep me up at night. They haunt me. There's too many of them already, and one is too many. And I think a lot of Americans were like, we're putting a stop to this. We have to stop this nonsense. It's crazy. We're sterilizing children. The other thing is free speech. And I was like, when we're talking in our weird, like, using that crazy YouTube language that you have to use, like unalived, and you're saying like the jib jab or whatever, like to get around, that's coming from one side.
100%.
I'm not using this language.
But I think it's coming from one side because that one side is in power. That's my fear. My fear is if the other side was in power and they were influenced by the same amount of money from these companies, they might be doing it too. So if the right was in control of all the social media companies, are we so naive that we think that they wouldn't be co-opted by giant corporations and they would want to censor them too? What happened was it was all the left. So the tech people who are, generally they go to universities and they get involved in electronics and technology, and these people are generally left-leaning, right? And if they're doing it in San Francisco, well, the whole culture's left-leaning, right? It's like not even leaning, it's just left, right? If you're a pariah, if you're you wear a MAGA hat in San Francisco, maybe today.
I think
today,
you can wear them now.
I bet today you can.
Yeah, in New York too. I think you can rock them.
But back when they were establishing these social media platforms, everybody was left-wing. Well, what if it was the opposite? What if technology was the realm of the right? And what if it was all, and what if like the gay rights? What if you start thinking about it in terms of like biblical law? Like a man layeth with a man, and people start getting real crazy about like gay. Yeah,
that might be the next 10 years.
Look, you see it in other. I don't think so.
But
you see, but that's the good thing. Trump is not conservative when it comes to social issues. He's not. And I think that's what we need. We need like a realist, someone who's like conservative fiscally and understands foreign policy and how to deal with dictators, but also someone who's like, I don't give a who you love.
Yeah.
Who cares? Who cares? I'm happy if you're happy. Are you in love with a woman and you're a woman? Fantastic. If you're in love, that's great.
Yeah, I think the argument, though, I mean, as you've seen with some of these articles that are like the right-wing ecosystem that like red-pilled all these men, the argument is that the internet is right-wing, and that this is why Trump won, is because all of these influencers are red-pilling people, and not, it's an easy way to not take any responsibility for how you've pushed men away from your party, how you've failed to get moderates in any sense of the way. Even just yesterday, you had the Trump photo op with him signing the rights for women to compete against just women. That is how
Crazy.
Did you? Yeah. How
He's
did you
the big
lose
feminist. Donald Trump's the biggest feminist president ever, just by signing that.
Yeah,
thing.
I know. It's so funny.
Crazy. It's so crazy. There was a guy who went on, it was MSNBC or CNN, I forget what it was, but he was essentially talking about me and Theo Vaughn and all these other podcasts like Flagrant, Andrew Schultz, as if this is this massive right-wing network that's heavily funded and has been built up over years, and we don't have anything like that. I'm like, dude, you're an idiot. You can go and watch me on a laptop in my den from 15, 16 years ago. With me and Red Band.
Think of what AG1 is behind this.
Yeah, we're hitting a bong, and our only sponsor was the Fleshlight. Shut the fuck up. That's not. You just don't want to admit that organically there's a bunch of people that feel very different than you. Also, they don't like you.
Yeah.
You don't represent a man to a lot of men. When you're one of those guys that talks in upspeak, we have to understand that there's a whole right-wing ecosystem, and it's built heavily funded, and the propaganda that they're pushing, we have to fight back against that. And we need someone of our own. And no fucking kid who's on a basketball court who's 17 years old is looking at his phone. It's like looking at going to college next year and looking at getting a job someday and being a man. Is looking at that and going, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And he's hanging out with his bros, and they're like, this is bullshit. This is bullshit. And then you could see a man who's not owned.
Yeah.
Like me.
Yeah.
I'm not owned. I can do whatever I want. And that's what they want. They want to just be a man. And be a nice man. You could be a nice man. You could be a masculine man and be nice.
So your level of suggestibility is how much will you think a person's an authority figure even if they're faking confidence? That's basically what that is. Mm-hmm. Will you accept a suggestion and act on it? And you've got guys like Sirhan who killed RFK in San Francisco. This is 60s.
I think it's Los Angeles.
I think it was San Francisco.
I think it's Los Angeles because I was at the actual hotel where they did it.
They
actually filmed Fear Factor there.
Okay.
See, that's true.
I don't doubt you at all.
I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure it's Los Angeles. And there's also some debate as to whether or not he did it.
Oh, I did a whole video on this on my channel. Yeah.
What is it? I don't know enough about it. But I know that there's some people that, obviously there's some people that think that like JFK's driver shot him or some like kooky conspiracies. Yeah, Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles shortly after Kennedy had finished. Yeah. So that hotel, we filmed Fear Factor there once. That's the only reason why I know. And we were in the kitchen where
it happened.
Yeah, we were in the spot.
Oh, man.
This is crazy. We filmed this stupid show in a place where a presidential candidate got murdered.
Yeah.
The Sirhan thing is like that. People believe that's part of MK Ultra. That he was some sort of mind-controlled person.
I do.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm maybe the number one guy in the country on the mind control stuff. I think I probably am. And I definitely believe that was influenced by a guy named Dr. Joy Len West.
Jolly West.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's not about skill. At something like if you're doing something like this, it's not much about skill level. It's can you find a good target that's highly suggestible? And it almost, you have some basic skills in this. I give you like 3 or 4 days worth of training in how to do covert hypnosis and all of this other stuff, and how to create amnesia in a person, so where you can just tell them to forget something and they'll willingly forget it. I could train you in 3 days how to do something like that. It's terrifying how our brains do not have a firewall. And the moment that our conscious filter that filters, like, is this information good for me? Should I accept this information? If I can bypass that filter, which is very easy to do, you can kind of just jam in whatever you want into somebody's head.
And so what evidence do we have that Sirhan was working with Jolly West?
There's not a lot. It's a lot of anecdotal stuff. But he met with this guy regularly, and I'm not an expert on the case. I wouldn't consider myself an expert. But he met with this guy at the shooting range on a regular basis. And this guy would talk to him privately, whisper in his ear in the shooting range. We all know this is from testimony. And later, when he was arrested after the shooting happened, he said, "I thought I was at the shooting range. I thought I was shooting at a target, at a paper target." And he's on record saying this. And he has no memory of that actual event happening. To this day, he went up for parole, I think a year or two ago. And man, all they did was ask him to kind of admit what you did and just say what you did. And he said, "I still have no memory of this event." And he had to stay in prison. And RFK believes it too.
Wow.
And you've had RFK on.
So Sirhan is meeting with this guy. Who is this guy?
Nobody really knows. Nobody fully knows. But the guy was involved and connected to Joylan, and they called him Radio Man. That's the only name that people have used to identify this guy. And he met Sirhan at a range and expressed, like, we're both interested in shortwave radio stuff and all that kind of ham radio. And they connected over that initially. And then this guy somehow looped him into the situation he was in.
So the MK Ultra stuff, a lot of it was experimental, right? They didn't necessarily have proof that a lot of what they were trying to do was effective. They knew that they could experiment with LSD on people. That was Operation Midnight Climax, where they took over the brothels, which is so wild. For people that don't know what this is, they took over brothels and they essentially had the prostitutes serve these Johns LSD without their knowledge, and then they observed them through two-way mirrors and filmed them. Yeah.
It filmed how they would act.
Yeah. So the CIA was running whorehouses. I don't even know if they had sex, because they probably dosed these guys up with so much acid. They probably didn't want to. But they observed them, and they did it for years. They also ran the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic, which is wild. And until, like, I think fairly recently. And there was a lot of hubbub about it after Tom O'Neill's book Chaos came out. And I think it was right after that they closed the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic.
Yeah.
But the CIA was essentially a part of the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic in the 1960s.
Yeah.
And that's where the Manson family came out of.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people, I'm not a researcher on this topic. I'm a researcher on the techniques.
Yeah.
But there's guys like Sidney Gottlieb was crazy. He was running the CIA. It was called OSS back then, Office of Special Services. And it was crazy. They called him a cowboy, but they brought in all this LSD. There's in Canada, they were running, I think this was, I think it was in Montreal. No, it was in Toronto. Montauk Institute, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they were doing things called psychic driving. They would keep people awake, and it was like Clockwork Orange. And they would hold their eyes open and just play these videos to kind of like and train them and really just drive their brains. And these were people that checked into the hospital with like postpartum depression. And they started doing this.
They just started experimenting on them.
Yeah, and the Canadian government admitted it so much that they paid these people for damages. So just one woman's case that I can remember, I don't remember her name, but she went in for postpartum, I think, and she did this psychic driving. When she came out, she had no real memories anymore. She wet herself. She had to relearn how to walk and communicate socially. She had to relearn how to hold her pee in.
How long was she there for?
I think it was like a month and a half. Unbelievable. But
I think back then they were trying to find a bunch of different methods of mind control, right? Like there's a very famous video from the 1950s of soldiers in the UK where they dose them up with acid and you see them wandering around the woods laughing and giggling. What about desalination?
Absolutely should be done. Great idea. I tried it when I was the head of Department of Water and Power.
Yeah?
Got fought by every environmental group there is.
Why? Do they think we're going to empty the entire ocean?
It's crazy.
There's so much water right there.
It's crazy. First of all, we're dumping sewage. You know, there's tertiary treatment where water is potable. We dump sewage, secondary treatment. It doesn't hurt the ocean, but we're dumping it. Take it to tertiary treatment. Put it back in the natural underground aquifers and save it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
that could be done.
The abundance of water that goes into the ocean is sort of what you start out with. Desal, brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We should be doing it. We should have desal plants supporting Los Angeles and big parts of the Southern California.
Also, that creates jobs.
Creates jobs. You can do it where it's environmentally safe. Absolutely. And it has a redundancy of power that comes off of it also that's helpful because we've got a power shortage in California. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we got more and more demand on our grid than we know how to supply right now. And again, back in the
How
day...
does it work as a redundancy of power?
Well, because you've got to generate a lot of power for the desal. When the desal's not operating, you've still got an operating power plant there. So you can skew up the operation in order to have additional energy coming off your desal plant.
Okay. And
you got to build a power plant to desal because of the amount of power it consumes to clean the water.
And how much water could be desalinated? Like how much of an impact can that actually have? Does it depend upon the size of the plant and how many of them there are?
It depends on the size of the plant. You can, depends on the size of the plant.
So ideally they should be set up though, like at various intervals along the coast, and you'd probably fix the entire. I mean, California could be completely green.
Well, listen, it could be, but it's also you mix sources of water. Like right now in LA, I'll just take LA. You've got the aqueduct that's bringing water down that William Mulholland built at the turn of the century, right? He was brilliant on how he did it. There isn't one pump. It's all gravity flow that comes down from Inyo County, Owens Valley, comes down. There was a whole bunch of controversy and everything, but all of that has sort of been fixed. That water comes down. There's some water that comes down from the state. There's water that Los Angeles has natural aquifers we pump, right? Again, and then you add desal to it, then you have one more supply that's backing up supply. And then, of course, you want to capture rainwater, which we do a terrible job of. We let it go in the ocean. We don't capture as much rainwater in Los Angeles as we should. Probably not much at all. But even with the sewage, why wouldn't you just spend the investment and take the treatment and put it back in the aquifer and have clean water?
Yeah.
It's just a constant supply. All we're doing now is we're dumping it in the ocean.
Yeah,
So-
it's very stupid. And it's doing the same thing you've always done and hoping for a different result.
Yeah.
What was the pushback from the idea of desalination plants?
Because there's a long line of thinkers that there should be no power plants along the coast of California because of the emissions. So years ago when I was president of DWP, under Tom Bradley's leadership at the time, converted all the old oil plants on the coast to gas to be clean. There's better technology now. You can convert those. They're testing out hydrogen and convert them to hydrogen plants. There's a big plant that DWP built in Utah when I was president called Intermountain Power Project. It was the cleanest coal burning plant in the country at the time. This is probably, 25 years ago now, 30 years ago. They're now testing and converting it to hydrogen, which will be absolutely clean. That's smart, right? So we
Literally
need,
makes oxygen.
right?
Yeah.
We need more. The question is, how do you boil water? Pick your source. That's what a plant does. A plant
Right.
boils water, creates steam, spins a turbine, you got electricity.
Right.
So whatever kind of fuel you want, we were partners in Palo Verde, which is the nuclear plant in Arizona. We need more nuclear plants
Yeah, I was
in
gonna
this
get to
country.
that.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and I don't know why the leadership in this state, hasn't been aggressive in building more clean burning plants, because we need them.
Nuclear has a negative stereotype in the public eye,
Yes, it does.
unfortunately, because of Chernobyl, 3
Right.
Mile Island, because of Fukushima. People think nuclear, they think disaster, they think terrible waste.
Right.
You can't get away from it. It pollutes the ground forever.
But it can be made very
But it
safe.
can be made much safer and much
100%.
cleaner, and it's not being done because and then also people have to understand that if you go back to the cars that were on the road at the time these nuclear power plants were built, those cars were polluting like crazy. You get a brand new
Yeah.
car, the emissions are far less.
Yeah,
Or you get a
for
Tesla,
sure.
you have none.
Yeah.
Right? So like, why would we look at the same old architecture of these like the Fukushima one's a prime example. It only had one backup generator. The backup
Right.
generator went out, they were done. They have them now where they can actually shut them down. They
Right.
have there's new design.
Oh, yeah. And listen, Palo Verde, again, is probably 20 or 30 years old. It's been an incredibly performing plant. Never has had a problem. So, again, this is where you sort of get into what your point is. Get somebody from the outside who's thinking big, who's thinking outside the box.
Right.
Who wants to change the landscape for the better way of having a quality of life, and is willing to think big. And you're going to get kicked in the head sometimes, and not every idea is going to make sense and work. But you only get there if you throw enough good ideas out on the table that you figure things
Right.
out, right? And so when you take a look at Los Angeles, when you take a look at California, I'm hopeful that you get leadership that just starts looking at things differently and will make some small moves that turns into big changes. So we'll see. I'm optimistic about it.
Well, I'm optimistic too. I am. I mean,
We're going to get you back there, Joe.
good luck. I'm never leaving Texas.
Okay. Fair
No,
enough.
I'll never live in a big city again. I think you get too big, it's just people become a burden. I think that there's a psychic aspect to it. Of,
Yeah.
The mindset of living in a smaller place is more relaxed.
Yeah,
It just feels better.
I get it.
Yeah.
No, I get that, especially raising a family and
Yes. But I did love living in LA. I lived there for 25 years. I loved it.
yeah.
Thought it was awesome. Had a great time there. I still miss parts of it. I still miss the Comedy Store, and I still miss,
Yeah.
There's amazing aspects to LA still, and there's an amazing group of human beings that live in LA still.
It's an incredible city.
I watched these two guys play chess with just words, and I was like, "What are you doing?" Like, what? I was like, I think I was 22 or 23 at the time, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And they were explaining to me that they're playing chess, memorizing the board in their head, and I'm like, "That's fucking crazy." And then I saw a video of you blindfolded playing how many people? How many people did you play? What was the most people you've ever played blindfolded?
I think I've played 12, but the world record is something like 50. That's crazy.
12. You played 12 people blindfolded.
Yeah. For me, that's as long as people are the people I'm playing are kind of decent at chess. That actually kind of makes it easier because it's easier to store the games when I recognize the patterns and so on. When people start making weird moves, I kind of really
So here you
recognize.
are.
Oh, so this is another one actually. This is a blindfold timed simul. Like there are fewer games, but what's difficult about these is that the moves do not come to me in a sequence. So like the presenter will tell me on board 2, e takes d5, and then all of a sudden on board 1, e6, and
Oh,
then
right.
on board 2 again, and so on. So that makes it a bit.
Oh, so you have to jump back and forth. So in the other games, there's a sequence where the player, even though if they know what move they're going to take, they must wait until their turn.
Exactly. That's kind of the normal way of playing playing a simul. I think the last time that I played a proper blindfold simul was at an event in Vienna back in I think 2015, and then I had some very nice but spicy Chinese food before the game. I sat down and like my stomach was acting up. I couldn't think. So I played for 10 minutes. I realized that I cannot do this. I ran away for 15 minutes and then I came back and I finished the game. But ever since that, it feels like I've done it, and now it just seems incredibly hard to do again. But
Do you prepare when you're doing something like this? When you're getting ready to do a blindfolded multi-game thing?
not really, because it's like if my mind is on, then it's really not that hard, I feel. So no, the preparation that I do is right there. I see my opponents, so like I sign a certain face to a certain seat, like a certain number, and so on. So that's just about what I do.
So you assign their face and you think of their face as they're playing.
Yeah. Face, like number 1, it's that position. And
Right.
then- yeah, and so on.
And what are you seeing in your mind when you're envisioning the table? When you're looking at the board, are you merely thinking of positions? Or are you actually thinking of the pieces? Like, how are you breaking it down?
No, I just see the chessboard in my head.
Just see it completely
yeah,
like
yeah.
3D chessboard in your head.
Yeah, so it's, and then when I'm playing a simul, I just really think about one at a time, and I kind of store the others away. And
But that's so crazy, like when you're 5-6 moves in and you're thinking of all these pieces moving around and you've got it remembered, you've completely memorized each position of 12 different boards.
yeah, so like the difficult part of it, that where things sometimes go wrong, is that, so generally I remember all the games that I've played, but I don't remember every move. I remember like in broad strokes what happened. And this is what can happen in these blindfold games as well sometimes. Like I can remember everything that's going on, but maybe there's a pawn on the side that I cannot remember if it moved one square or not. That's the thing that can be difficult. And we used to have these blindfold like professional tournaments actually. That used to be like both fun but also totally exhausting. And then we would play on a computer, so we'd have like a blank chessboard where we would just click from one square to another, and then whenever your opponent moved, their move would pop up on the screen. And I've had, and also the software will tell you if you're making an illegal move. So I've had people like lose track and then you see them just clicking frenetically trying to figure out what the position was. Like there was one guy whom I played, like he thought his rook was on a certain file, and if it was on that file he would be able to save a draw. So I think he tried every single rook move on that file hoping that the rook was there, but like obviously I knew that it wasn't. But yeah, overall, I feel like, honestly, like blindfold chess is a bit of a party trick in the sense that for the very top players, it's not that hard. But obviously, for like serious chess players, it seems incredibly hard. But I'm sure that, for instance, like solving Rubik's Cube is really, really easy for those who know how to do it quickly, right?
Yeah.
But it still looks incredibly impressive for outsiders.
I watched these two guys play chess with just words, and I was like, "What are you doing?" Like, what? I was like, I think I was 22 or 23 at the time, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And they were explaining to me that they're playing chess, memorizing the board in their head. And I'm like, that's fucking crazy. And then I saw a video of you blindfolded playing how many people? How many people did you play? What was the most people you've ever played blindfolded?
I think I've played 12, but the world record is something like 50. It's that's crazy.
12. You played 12 people blindfolded.
Yeah. For me, that's as long as people are the people I'm playing are kind of decent at chess. That actually kind of makes it easier because it's easier to store the games when I recognize the patterns and so on. When people start making weird moves that I cannot really recognize.
Here you are.
Oh, so this is another one actually. This is a blindfold timed simul. Like there are fewer games, but what's difficult about these is that the moves do not come to me in a sequence. So like the presenter will tell me on board 2, e takes d5, and then all of a sudden on board 1, e6, and then
right.
on board 2 again, and so on. So that makes it a bit.
So you have to jump back and forth. So in the other games, there's a sequence where the player, even though if they know what move they're going to take, they must wait until their turn.
Exactly. That's kind of the normal way of playing a simul. I think the last time that I played a proper blindfold simul was at an event in Vienna back in I think 2015, and then I had some very nice but spicy Chinese food before the game. I sat down and like my stomach was acting up. I couldn't think, so I played for 10 minutes. I realized that I cannot do this. I ran away for 15 minutes and then I came back. And I finished the game. But ever since that, it feels like I've done it, and now it just seems incredibly hard to do again. But
do you prepare when you're doing something like this? When you're getting ready to do a blindfolded multi-game thing?
Not really, because it's like if my mind is on, then it's really not that hard, I feel. So no, the preparation that I do is right there. I see my opponents, so like I assign a certain face to a certain seat, like a certain number, and so on. So that's just about what I do.
So you assign their face and you think of their face as they're playing.
Yeah. Face, like number 1, it's that position.
Right.
Yeah, and so on.
And what are you seeing in your mind when you're envisioning the table? When you're looking at the board, are you merely thinking of positions? Are you actually thinking of the pieces? Like, how are you breaking it down?
No, I just see the chessboard in my head.
You just see it completely 3D chessboard in your head? Yeah,
so it's... and then when I'm playing a simul, I just really think about one at a time, and I kind of store the others away. And
But that's so crazy, like when you're 5-6 moves in, and you're thinking of all these pieces moving around, and you've got it remembered. You've completely memorized each position of 12 different boards.
Yeah, so like the difficult part of it, that where things sometimes go wrong, is that, so generally I remember all the games that I've played, but I don't remember every move. I remember like in broad strokes what happened. And this is what can happen in these blindfold games as well sometimes. Like I can remember everything that's going on, but maybe there's a pawn on the side that I cannot remember if it moved one square or not. That's the thing that can be difficult. And I do. We used to have these blindfold like professional tournaments actually. That used to be like both fun but also totally exhausting. And then we would play on a computer, so we'd have like a blank chessboard where we would just click from one square to another, and then whenever your opponent moved, their move would pop up on the screen. And I've had, and also the software will tell you if you're making an illegal move. So I've had people like lose track, and then you see them just clicking frenetically, trying to figure out what the position was. Like there was one guy whom I played, like he thought his rook was on a certain file, and if it was on that file, he would be able to save a draw. So I think he tried every single rook move on that file, hoping that the rook was there. But like obviously I knew that it wasn't. But yeah, overall I feel like honestly like blindfold chess is a bit of a party trick in the sense that for the very top players it's not that hard, but obviously for like serious chess players it seems incredibly hard. But I'm sure that, for instance, like solving Rubik's Cube is really, really easy for those who know how to do it quickly, right?
Yeah.
But it still looks incredibly impressive for outsiders.
I was really worried from the beginning about basically becoming this sort of decider of what is true in the world, right? That's like kind of a crazy position to be in for billions of people using your service. And so we tried to put in place a system that would deal with it. And early on tried to basically make it so that it was really limited. We were like, all right, we're just gonna have this system where these third-party fact checkers, and they can check the worst of the worst stuff, right? So things that are very clear hoaxes, that there's like, it's not like we're not parsing speech about whether something is slightly true or slightly false, like Earth is flat, things like that, right? So that was sort of the original intent. We put in place the system and it just sort of veered from there. I think to some degree, it's because some of the people whose job is to do fact-checking, a lot of their industry is focused on political fact-checking, so they just kind of veered in that direction. We kept on trying to basically get it to be what we had originally intended, which is just, it's not, the point isn't to like judge people's opinions, it's to provide this layer to kind of help fact-check some of the stuff that seems the most extreme, but it just, it was just never accepted by people broadly. I think people just felt like the fact checkers were too biased. Not necessarily even so much in what they ruled, although sometimes I think people would disagree with that. A lot of the time, it was just what types of things they chose to even go and fact check in the first place. So, I kind of think like after having gone through that whole exercise, it I don't know, it's something out of like 1984, one of these books where it's just like, it really is a slippery slope. And it just got to a point where it's just, okay, this is destroying so much trust, especially in the United States, to have this program. And I guess it was probably about a few years that I really started coming to the conclusion that we were going to need to change something about that. COVID was the other big one, where that was also very tricky, because at the beginning it was, it's like a legitimate public health crisis, in the beginning. And it's, even people who are like the most ardent First Amendment, defenders, the Supreme Court has this clear precedent. It's like, all right, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. There are times when if there's an emergency, your ability to speak can temporarily be curtailed in order to get an emergency under control. So I was sympathetic to that at the beginning of COVID. It seemed like, okay, you have this virus. It seems like it's killing a lot of people. I don't know, like we didn't know at the time how dangerous it was going to be. So at the beginning, it kind of seemed like, okay, we should give a little bit of deference to the government and the health authorities on how we should play this. But when it went from, 2 weeks to flatten the curve to, and like in the beginning it was like, okay, there aren't enough masks aren't that important, to then it's like, oh no, you have to wear a mask, and all the, like everything was shifting around. It just became very difficult to kind of follow, and this really hit the most extreme, I'd say, during the Biden administration, when they were trying to roll out the vaccine program. And now, I'm generally like pretty pro rolling out vaccines. I think on balance, the vaccines are more positive than negative. But I think that while they're trying to push that program, they also tried to censor anyone who was basically arguing against it. And they pushed us super hard to take down things that were true, right? I mean, they basically pushed us and said, anything that says that vaccines might have side effects, you basically need to take down. And I was just like, well, we're not going to do that. Like, we're clearly not going to do that. I mean, that is kind of inarguably true.
Who is they? Who's telling you to take down things that
it was
that talk about vaccine side effects?
It was people in the Biden administration. I think it was, I wasn't involved in those conversations directly, but I think it was.
How difficult is that to not be involved in those conversations directly? That's got to be strange too, right? Because you're running the company, but there's clearly you're moderating at scale that's beyond the imagination. The number of human beings you're moderating is fucking insane. Like, what's a Facebook? How many people use it on a daily basis? Forget about how many overall. Like, how many people use it regularly?
It's 3.2 billion people use one of our services every day. Yeah, it's wild.
More than a third of the planet.
Yes,
That's so crazy.
Yeah, and it's
almost half of Earth.
Well, on a monthly basis, it is probably half. But
so, I want to say that though, there's a lot of like hypercritical people that are conspiracy theorists and think that everybody's a part of some cabal to control them. I want you to understand that whether it's YouTube or all these, whatever place that you think is doing something that's awful, it's good that you speak, because this is how things get changed, and this is how people find out that people are upset about content moderation and censorship. But moderating at scale is insane.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
What we were talking the other day about the number of videos that go up every hour on YouTube, and it's bananas. It's bananas. It's like to try to get a human being that is reasonable, logical, and objective, that's going to analyze every video. It's virtually impossible. It's not possible. So you got to use a bunch of tools. You got to get a bunch of things wrong, and you have also people reporting things. And how much is that going to affect things? You could have mass reporting because you have bad actors. You have some corporation that decides we're going to attack this video because it's bad for us, going to take it down. There's so much going on. I want to put that in people's heads before we go on. Like, understand the kind of numbers that we're talking about here. Now understand you have the pandemic, and then you have the administration that's doing something where I think they crossed the line, where it gets really weird, where they're saying what you were saying. They were trying to get you to take down vaccine side effects, which is just crazy.
Yeah, so, I mean, like you're saying, I mean, it's so complicated, this system, that I could spend every minute of all of my time doing this and not actually focused on building any of the things that we're trying to do. AI, glasses, like the future of social media, all that stuff. So, I mean, I get involved in this stuff, but in general, we have a policy team. There are people who I trust. They're the people who are kind of working on this on a day-to-day basis. And the interactions that I was just referring to, I mean, a lot of this is documented. I mean, because Jim Jordan and the House had this whole investigation committee into the kind of government censorship around stuff like this, and we produced all these documents, and it's all in the public domain. I mean, basically, these people from the Biden administration would call up our team and like scream at them and curse, and it's like these documents it's all kind of out there.
Did you record any of those phone calls?
I don't think we were, but I think
I want to listen.
I mean, there are emails. the emails are published. It's all kind of out there, and they're like, and basically it just got to this point where we were like, no, we're not gonna take down things that are true. That's ridiculous. They wanted us to take down this meme of Leonardo DiCaprio looking at a TV talking about how 10 years from now or something, you're going to see an ad that says, okay, if you took a COVID vaccine, you're eligible, for this kind of payment, like this sort of like class action lawsuit type meme. And they're like, no, you have to take that down. We said, no, we're not going to take down humor and satire. We're not going to take down things that are true. And then at some point, I guess, I don't know, it flipped a bit. I mean, Biden, when he gave some statement at some point, I don't know if it was a press conference or to some journalists, where he basically was like, these guys are killing people. And I don't know, then like all these different agencies and branches of government basically just like started investigating and coming after our company. It was brutal. It was brutal.
Wow. Yeah. It's just a massive overstepping.
Yeah,
and,
well,
and
I mean,
also,
I think
you weren't killing people. This is the thing about all this. It's like they suppressed so much information about things that people should be doing, regardless of whether or not you believe in the vaccine. Regardless, put that aside. Metabolic health is of the utmost importance in your everyday life, whether there's a pandemic or there's not. And there's a lot of things that you can do that can help you recover from illness. It prevents illnesses. It makes your body more robust and healthy. It strengthens your immune system. And they were suppressing all that information. And that's just crazy. You can't say you're one of the good guys if you're suppressing information that would help people recover from all kinds of diseases, not just COVID, the flu, common cold, all sorts of different things, high doses of vitamin C, D3 with K2 and magnesium. They were suppressing this stuff because they didn't want people to think that you could get away with not taking the vaccine, which is really crazy when you're talking about something that 99.07% of people survive. This is a crazy overstep, but scared the shit out of a lot of people. Red-pilled, as it were, a lot of people, because they realized, like, oh, 1984 is like an instruction manual. I mean, it's like it shows you how things can go that way with wrong speak and with bizarre distortion of facts. And when it comes down to it, in today's day and age, the way people get information is through your platform, through X. This is how people are getting information. They're getting information from YouTube. They're getting information from a bunch of different sources now. And you can't censor that if it's real legitimate information because it's not ideologically convenient for you.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's basically the journey that I've been on, right? Started off very pro free speech, free expression. And then over the last 10 years, there have been these two big episodes. It was the Trump election and the aftermath, where I feel like in retrospect, I deferred too much to the kind of critique of the media on what we should do. Mm-hmm. And since then, I think generally trust in media has fallen off a cliff, right? So I don't think I'm alone in that journey. I think that's basically the experience that a lot of people have had is, okay, it's the stuff that's being written about is not kind of all accurate. And even if the facts are right, it's kind of written from a slant a lot of the time.
Of course.
And then there was the government version of it, which was during COVID, which is okay, like it's like our government is telling us that we need to censor true things. It's like this is a disaster. And it's not just the U.S., right? I think a lot of people in the U.S. focus on this as an American phenomenon, but I kind of think that the reaction to COVID probably caused a breakdown in trust in a lot of governments around the world. Because 2024 was a big election year around the world, and there were all these countries, India, Mexico, just like a ton of countries that had elections, and the incumbents basically lost every single one. So there is some sort of a global phenomenon where the whether it was because of inflation, because of the economic policies to deal with COVID, or just how the governments dealt with COVID, seems to have had this effect that's global. Not just the U.S., but like a very broad decrease in trust, at least in that set of incumbents, and maybe in sort of these democratic institutions overall. So I think that what you're saying of, how do people get their information now? It's by sharing it online on social media. I think that that's just increasingly true. And my view at this point is like, all right, like we started off focused on free expression. We kind of had this pressure tested over the last period. I feel like I just have a much greater command now of what I think the policy should be. And like this is how it's going to be going forward, and so I mean at this point I think a lot of people look at this as like a purely political thing. It's because they kind of look at the timing and they're like, hey, well you're doing this right after the election. It's like, okay, I try not to like change our content rules like right in the middle of an election either, right? It's like there's not like a great time to do this. It's
right. And you want to do it a year later.
Yeah, it's like there's no good time to do it. There's,
right.
And whatever time is going on, there's going to be, so. The good thing about doing it after the election is you get to take this kind of cultural pulse as like, okay, where are people right now and how are people thinking about it? We try to have policies that reflect, mainstream discourse. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is something I've been thinking about for a while. I think that this is going to be pretty durable because at this point we've just been pressure tested on this stuff for like the last 8 to 10 years with like these huge institutions just pressuring us and And I feel like this is kind of the right place to be going forward.
What was it like when they were attacking you? Like, first of all, what was the premise? Like, what were they saying was your offense? Was it that you were allowing information that was not true, that was getting out there? I know there was also, they're saying that you guys were allowing hate groups to speak. There's a lot of this.
Yeah. I mean, the tough thing with politics is that there's like, well, when you say someone's coming after you, you're referring to kind of the government and investigations and all that. I mean, so the issue is that there's what specific thing an agency might be looking into you for, and then there's like the underlying political motivation, which is like, why do the people who are running this thing hate you? And I think that those can often be two very different things.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say this, even though I know that this is going to cause a lot of headlines. But here's a great example of this. The NATO Psychological Operations Planning Center in Riga, Latvia, in 2019, and you can pull this on screen if you type in Taylor Swift, NATO, or you type in, what was it, trained to share messaging, or just trained messaging, and this was a big news cycle. There was a huge controversy around it. It has a picture on that slide deck where, again, this is psychological operations planners pitching to NATO, the Western world's military alliance, and the slide has a picture of Taylor Swift, and it basically says something like, and when the receipts are on the screen, you'll read it directly. It says, example of, celebrities who can be trained to spread desired messaging. I think that was the exact phrase, trained to spread desired messaging. And the presenter goes over the drawbacks of this and how, whether we need to decide some of the moral efficacy of this, but basically saying that, Taylor Swift has worked in various things before that have been empirically shown to move the needle on government initiatives. For example, her Get Out the Vote, her Get Out the Vote work, increase the vote, her public health campaign stuff, buying there. Well, that video has a lot of cursor. Okay, yeah, pause right there. Okay, no, scroll up, right there. Pause right there. And if you see that goal, identify key actors to train and spread desired messaging. This is on NATO's, we pay for NATO. We paid for this to be pitched. Now, here's where some of this story got misreported. I don't know that anyone from NATO directly reached out to Taylor Swift or her campaign to do that. And if they did, this would not be formalized in a formal Pentagon grant or quid pro quo. But I should note, look at who the biggest sponsor of South by Southwest is in Texas now. It's the military. Go ahead and look up the scandal if you want about South by Southwest Pentagon funding. They've taken over the music industry because it's hearts and minds work. Okay, well, I guess that just happened in 2024. Let's see. If you go to, okay, so this has caused so much problems for the past couple of years that I guess they're now reforming this. But if you run a Boolean search for before 2024, you'll see this. But basically, the Pentagon, or if you scroll down, maybe it might be right there. So it caused this big boycott because the Pentagon, in tandem with this music diplomacy program and these U.S. aid backing of these things. Okay, well that's a U.S. Army in Palestine one, but you'll see the numbers on this. Basically, the Pentagon moves into this, and just like they were, giving Dua Lipa the awards, just like they're working with Pussy Riot, just like they have 22. In fact, you can look this up if you want. The State Department Music Diplomacy Program, 22 rappers, hip hop. You'll see, again, these people become network nodes. They become assets to play with, and an incredible example of this that I hesitate to discuss here because I know that the organization that these documents leaked from is contesting these documents, but there's evidence to suggest the same play around recruiting the hip hop artists in Cuba. And, in here you go. Breakdancing news. Diplomacy meets hip-hop as 22 artists visit the U.S. Okay? This is the U.S. State Department. We are paying to recruit them as assets. So when they go, and go ahead, look at the country list, if you want. Look how far and wide this is to the edges of the earth. Mongolia, Cameroon, there's a whole thing here. But basically, it was protest rock. It was protest rap in Cuba for that USAID operation. It was protest rap. There's language, for example, in this gray zone report around Bangladesh, and I'll leave it to the current fight between them and the National Endowment for Democracy about the nature of those documents. But those documents that the gray zone published have 2 rap songs in Bangladesh that have lines like they were designed to inspire anti-government sentiment and to promote street protests and political reform. I mean, literally writing rap albums to get people to take to the streets and pull off the exact riot that the State Department wants to destabilize the country. And music penetrates. I mean, they got really attached to this during the Cold War and in the 1980s because and in fact, in those documents, they talk about how sponsoring individual artists is actually sometimes a lot more effective because they do art and activism. While they're putting on these festivals, they're promoting an agenda at the festivals. While they are putting these, songs on radio distribution and supercharging, their brand, those songs have themes and messages about taking down authoritarian governments, and the people got to rise up. And you have to represent the will of the people. We have to end poverty. And then they'll make the argument it's the government's fault that there's poverty. We have to end racial or gender inequality. And then the State Department or USAID will be working through its demographic segmentation with those exact groups. This is another reason we've been pumping up these feminist groups and these LGBT groups. If you want, for example, you can pull up the WikiLeaks CIA Red Cell memo that showed how the CIA pitched to the State Department during the Afghanistan war that the best way to shore up additional funds from European parliaments is to transition states' media octopus messaging from a national security predicate for the war to a feminism and a women's empowerment one because of field work and polling from the Central Intelligence Agency around Europe showed that European parliaments and voting demographics said on surveys that they were more willing to give money or wanted to give more money from their own government coffers, their own taxpayer funds, to the war in Afghanistan if it was about stopping repression against women or if it was about giving women more rights in the society and whatnot. And so that wasn't because the CIA loves feminism now. This was a cold, calculated instrument of statecraft to shift the messaging and then also to work with these exact groups who have that cleavage point axe to grind against their country as part of the mobilizations. This is how you see a lot of these women's marches and women's protests, where you see a lot of these sort of protected class ones, because that also gets you the human rights predicate to add sanctions and other protected speech measures. Like this is why the State Department pushed Facebook to put hate speech provisions in place to stop hate speech against the Rohingya.
When you're watching all this unfold, one of the things that I've been seeing is that there's been legal action to try to halt some of it. They've been told to destroy any information that they got from certain databases. Like, what's your take on this, and whether any of that is going to hold up?
Oh, 100%. Well, 100. I don't know if it's going to hold up. I think it's going to be a legal dogfight. This is, it's funny because it's sort of a circular dragon eating its own tail, because you're going after the primary soft power projection organ of the blob because it's been weaponized against Americans. But what is the blob authorized to do? What is USAID authorized to do under statute? Well, something they call judicial reform, which is USAID poaching, funding financially the networks around judges, around courts, around the legal system, around the governance structure of every country on planet Earth. They've won hundreds of awards. Their name has been so pristine for so long. They've been around for almost 20 years, and they were sponsored in order to do investigative hit piece journalism about corruption. And what they do is they go after all of the State Department and USAID and DOD's opponents in the region. So, for example, Jamie, I texted you this beforehand, but if the first thing you want to put on screen are the first 2 images that I texted you. This is from the USAID.gov website, and I think this will shock people when they see this. on, with the USAID.gov URL right there. So here it is. This is USAID's Strengthening Transparency and Accountability Through Investigative Reporting Program. Okay. What you'll see here is you'll see the life of activity. This fund they are still being funded through this grant. And this is for Europe and Eurasia. And you'll see the countries: Eastern Partnership, Armenia, Belarus, Georgia, Moldova, Ukraine, and Western Balkans. If you scroll down, you'll see USAID spending. USAID funding is $20 million. $20 million that our taxpayers paid to listen, they don't report on, kittens being saved from falling out of trees. Everything they do is a hit piece about an instance of corruption that can be used by prosecutors in the area to arrest the political opponents of the State Department. And what you'll see here is capacity. Now, this is the phrase everybody has to know. Capacity building is what this is all built under. That means pumping up the blob's assets. Whenever you see the word capacity or capacity building, it means this thing is useful to us. The more money we give it, the more powerful they are to project our influence. And so if you go back to that page, which is page 2 of this USAID thing, here's what you see. So for $20 million of investment from USAID, here are and this is live on the website. You can find this in the Wayback Machine right now because the USAID website's down. This is USAID, the U.S. government, bragging about the achievements of what they achieved by spending $20 million. At least $4.5 billion in fines levied against targets of these hit pieces. Now, by the way, I should note that the head of the OCCRP was busted in a major documentary that has very little distribution, but I encourage everyone to watch, where he said, because this was I think a year and a half ago or whatnot, but they're up to over $10 billion now.
What's the documentary?
It's on the WikiLeaks X page right now. It's by a group of German journalists who had one-on-one interviews with the head of this group, OCCRP, as well as the USAID grant coordinator and others. And so it's straight from the horse's mouth. And he says in that interview, I believe his name is Drew Sullivan, that it's now over $10 billion. And he brags that is I think he said it was a 20,000% return on investment because all these dollars were, quote, returned to government coffers. So for $20 million of mercenary media for the state-sponsored hit pieces, the government's got $10 billion back. That's pretty good. That's a 1995 Amazon level return on investment. But now let's get into the darker stuff. 548 policy changes by the government or actions by civil society and the private sector. Now, we don't know if these policy changes are good or bad. Do you think USAID would list them as accomplishments if they were not in furtherance of USAID's or the State Department's foreign policy goals in the region? What they are saying and trying to sort of speak through their teeth, as they say it, is that they proudly sponsored hit piece journalism to ruin people's lives and go after political targets in order to change the policies of foreign governments from the inside. Now, it goes on to say 21 resignations and sackings, including of a president and prime minister. Now, the head of OCCRP in this documentary openly says that their reporting caused, I think it was 5 or 6 different governments to topple and turn over and be transitioned. Proudly. So this is state-sponsored media hit pieces so that prosecutors can arrest presidents and prime ministers to regime change their government and install a more pro-U.S. Political vassal figure in the region. And then the last one is 456 arrests and indictments. And this, again, is listed as a USAID achievement. We don't know what these people did. We don't know, whether they're guilty or innocent, or whether or not these were political prosecutions, like you see right now with the New York District Attorney's offices, which is a whole other USAID-connected can of worms. But these are state-sponsored hit pieces for hire in order to give the Justice Departments, the prosecutors in a region, the ammunition to arrest the enemies of the state. The prosecutors don't have the capacity to do a whole investigative journalism dig. They might not have access to hacked documents that, for example, the CIA, the NSA, or deeply connected political insiders might be able to give to a group like OCCRP. Now USAID gets a veto right over who they can hire. OCCRP has to submit an annual work plan to be submitted to and reviewed for approval by the State Department and USAID. And here's the kicker of it all. USAID OCCRP, paid for by us, U.S. taxpayers, dug up dirt on Rudy Giuliani's work in Ukraine. This is because this was part of the 2019 impeachment, and Rudy Giuliani and his work in Ukraine. So they went and dug up dirt on Rudy Giuliani, a domestic U.S. citizen and high-profile political figure, actually attorney to the U.S. president. And then that dirt came home and was used as part of the basis for the 2019 impeachment of the sitting president, Donald Trump. That would have never happened unless USAID sponsored that hit piece work, because it's the same foreign policy blob that went after Trump in the first place because of his difference in foreign policy vision around Ukraine, Russia.
That was an ass whooping.
Nah,
Technical ass whooping.
I wonder if there's more to it. I wonder if there was something up with him.
Something, it didn't look like the normal Strickland, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but DDP fought real well, man.
Yeah, I'm not taking it away from
but
him.
just Strickland didn't have that gas he usually has.
Mm-hmm. Well, he might have had staff. He might have had staff.
Yeah, we never know.
It was that big right hand that changed everything. There's a nice elbow, a spinning elbow. This one right here. Boom!
That was the game changer.
I mean, look at his eyes.
That changed the
That
whole
shit
fight.
rolled his head back, son.
Strickland was never the same after that broke down.
That's rough, man.
Such a smart strategy, man. There's that high kick to the face.
But he's still very good at taking, getting hit.
And he gave him a lot to look at there.
What are you saying?
He didn't take as much damage, but that
Right, look at his face.
Yeah, that one.
You mean
punch.
Sean didn't take as much damage?
No, he took damage.
He got hit more in this fight than I think any fight, other than the Pereira
He's
fight.
able.
That
He's
was
still
quick.
able to kind of like.
His
It was
nose is
one
shattered.
big punch that things up.
He like
Mostly
Brian-
Bro, he got beat up.
He like Brian, his nose is shattered.
Bro, he got beat up. He got beat up.
One good shot to his face. It's.
I tell you, Drake looks great.
What kind of he's got that's an operation, right? I mean, he's got to now get it all set.
Yeah, clear, unanimous decision.
So they probably gave Strickland the fourth round.
Yeah.
Yep. Dricus Duplessis, ladies and gentlemen.
He's a problem.
He's
man.
wild,
He's
man.
a tough puzzle to figure out.
He's a tough puzzle.
If someone's
He's a
gonna do
tough
it, might
puzzle
be
to figure
Hamza.
out. Very tough fight to figure out. Big for 185 too. That's a big.
I want to see
Smart
that
too.
fight,
Smart
though.
fighter.
Man, they did a great job of setting up, throwing that low kick, switch kick to the body, kept that pace up for the entire 5. Crank that up. Let me hear what he says.
Nice guy. This guy.
Classy. He's a class act.
Classy.
Class act.
Yeah.
Talking to Hamza. Oh, wow.
That's going to be a different game.
Oh yeah, that's a night
That's a
night when you
very
get touched
different-
game.
Yeah, it's a very different game.
Yeah.
We'll see as you can wrestle him then.
probably get tased. He always said his coach tases them. They tase them. They tase them and train when they do something wrong. They tase them.
Really?
Oh yeah, his coach has one of those police things.
Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
To get arrested in America.
yeah,
That
bro.
sucks.
Just said I'll probably get tased.
That fight wasn't close, fellas.
Nope.
Fight wasn't
He keeps
close.
getting better.
He's got his endurance. He can't even stop talking. Look at this guy.
I want to hear what Sean has to say.
Me too.
I hope he doesn't bring up the staff. You can't, right? You
Can't
gotta
do-
talk
I
about that
hate when
tomorrow.
fighters
Too
do that.
soon.
I hate when fighters do
That's when they say too soon.
Yeah, talk about that tomorrow. Maybe DC asks him. I would definitely ask him. Was that staff? Were you on antibiotics? That would have been probably my first questions.
that. If you ask it, it's fine. He's like, yeah.
I would have
dealing with
said,
some staff.
was there anything surprising
But
about
I'd
this
go,
fight?
dealing with staff, but that's
Yeah.
not the reason I lost. All credit
right.
to DDP.
Right.
Let the
But,
fans talk to
but is that staff?
All right.
Well, it's a good night, fellas.
Good night.
Nice.
It's a good night.
I had a good time.
Well, let's start. Are you giving a teaching a jiu-jitsu class now, or are we going to wait a little bit?
I
do
do it.
have
I just
mats.
showed it.
I need to stretch a little bit.
Oh, Brian.
All right.
Oh man, good times.
That was
That was
fun.
good times.
Man,
That was
thanks
fun.
for having me.
Did you
Big-
feel
big
a little
boys in
down?
this
A
corner.
little down when Sean got beat up?
I
Everybody
thought
here
it'd
was
be more
kinda rooting for him.
competitive. I thought it'd be more competitive.
Very impressive.
He's
Fucking-
not going to beat that guy.
Jimmy Norton beat me in the picks a little.
Did he?
I think he picked both.
But
Drake
now
is-
it's crazy. It's
and,
like I thought Robert Whitaker was going to give him problems with that style. I really did. I thought Robert Whitaker with his leaping in style, and he's like very light on his feet, fast as I thought he was going to give him problems. And DDP shut that down and then
Fucked him up.
caught him with that right hook.
I would give DDP the advantage over Hamzat right now. If I had to bet on it.
It's hard to say
It's
because
hard-
we don't know what happens.
There's so many
Hamzat.
question marks. We don't know.
Hamzat just shoots from like 15 feet away and gets a hold of your
But I
legs
look
so
at the
quick.
Kamaru. He didn't do that to Kamaru Usman. Didn't do it to Gilbert
He did.
Burns. We go
But-
in the third, fourth, and fifth.
He gave Usman for the first 3 rounds a nightmare. He was,
Yeah,
he
he
was
gassed
taking
out,
him down.
but he
Yeah.
couldn't finish him.
That's
an
true.
older
True.
Usman.
That's true.
That's not a vintage Usman.
was-
in their prime?
He was
DDP?
taking him down decisively.
Who was
though. He out
Hamzat
wrestling.
supposed to fight? That was a last-minute replacement. Was Usman? Who
Nate
was
Diaz.
Hamzat?
And then they put in.
That's right.
And then they put in
That was-
Kevin Holland.
That would have been hard.
That would have been
bad.
Yeah,
That would have been hard.
The UFC was like, we're getting backlash.
That would have been.
We're getting some backlash here. Let's Kevin, you down? He's like, I guess.
That would have been crazy.
styles make fights, and you never seen Drake's fight a good wrestler, and Khamzat's one of the best. So
And
it's
you got to
fucking
think his
best.
endurance is probably going to be better at 85 than it was at 70 because of the cut.
Yeah.
For Hamzat, it's like 85 is really where he should have been all along.
But again, he gassed out against Usman. That was at 85. Usman
well,
went up to 85.
Usman's a world champion, you know. In the third round, Usman did what a world champion does. He rallied.
You know, we had an evacuation order that they sent out by accident to people even down where I'm at.
Yeah, what was that?
It was some guy who fucked up because I don't know if you know this is gonna be shocking. Grab the table. LA's not run very well.
Hold on.
I know. Hold
What
on.
the fuck you
well,
saying?
Because see, here's the thing. We have
Wait
to
a
worry
minute.
about. I know. It's,
Isn't the chief of fire department a lesbian?
now hold
LA's
on. Let's
run
not turn
amazing.
this into. Listen. Here's the bottom
It's
line.
run amazing.
It's not about infrastructure. Infrastructure's got
I
to take.
won't sit here while you disparage the great people
Sir?
that are running Los Angeles.
Sir, infrastructure's got to take a backseat to climate change and social justice and homeless abatement, which hasn't worked.
See, the lady who's responsible for filling the fire hydrants gets paid $750,000 a year.
Hey, your tax dollars going to good work there, everybody.
That's a lot of money.
You think?
That's sitcom
You
money.
think? I said
That's like I'm the star of a sitcom.
Oh, dude.
Not
It's,
star, but like you're the third person.
no,
on
that's a
sitcom.
high wage, sir. 750 grand
Oh, yeah.
for a city employer
For someone just like fill that one.
how the
Get the
aquifers
waters.
how the aquifers today.
Get the water in that one.
You know what? We got to protect the Delta smelt.
Yeah.
Which, whatever the fuck that is. So we gotta you know.
Trump was talking about that on the podcast. On the podcast I did with him, Trump was going on this long rampage about Los Angeles and the fires and how it all can be prevented and they could have plenty of water. He explained the whole thing, and he's right.
Here's my whole philosophy. You guys know, that we have a tinderbox. And you can say that there are a lot of people that live there. The fires it's always a potential. If that's the case, then please make sure the fire hydrants, we've got to be able to figure that out. You guys in LA, California came up with AI. I mean, the Silicon Valley was pretty innovative people. Let's figure out a way to keep the fucking...
Very different people.
They are very different people,
That's like saying people in America are homeless and also Elon Musk.
Right.
You know what
well,
I'm saying?
get some people down in government who are innovative like that. What the fuck are we doing?
They don't want to do that job.
Do you know the City Council of Los Angeles? 4 of the members of the City Council are far-left social democrats. How about that? There's zero pushback on ideas. It's just all
ideology. It's all an echo chamber. Well, I'm hoping now that this is a giant wake-up call for these people. I mean, there's no positivity that's going to come out of a horrific fire like that. But at least it'll wake. Because look, that area, Adam Carolla was on someone's show talking about this, and he said something that's like very I think he was actually doing it himself.
Yeah, about permits?
Yeah. Well, he was just saying that there's 80% of the people that live there are far left. 80% of the people that got their houses burned down from complete, total incompetence and lack of management. That's total incompetence.
Yeah.
80% of those people are far left people, and that's a giant wake-up call when you realize, no, these fucking people, this is not the way to do it. Did you see that lady, the fire lady, who's a part of this whole diversity thing? They said, "You're a woman firefighter. Can you carry my husband out of a burning building?" She was like, "Well, if your husband's in a burning building, he already made a mistake."
Is that what she said?
She said, big old sassy fat black lady.
Yeah, my favorite was that one of the women said, "You want people to look like you."
Same lady.
And I'm like, "Hey, listen, hey lady, when my house is on fire and I'm trying to get my kids out, I'm not going to be like, hey, can I get some people that look like me because this doesn't make me feel safe.
I want them to look like Brian Shaw.
So
I want them to be coming through the fucking wall looking like Juggernaut.
Driven snow. Okay, if they look like a White Walker and they can get me out of that fucking fire, I'm in. I want Brian Shaw.
to be a giant dude who can carry people
with a mustache that goes like this.
Yeah,
right?
Fucking handlebar.
I love firemen. I'm so gay that when I saw they came by, I saw some firemen and I didn't know what to do. I wanted to say something like, "Go get them, guys," or something like that, and I literally went like this. I saluted them. I went.
That's good.
It's a little embarrassing.
It's an acknowledgement.
Yeah, but my wife is so funny because my wife is very handy, and I said, and we had an evacuation order. I looked at her and I go, "I got to go do Joe's podcast and then shoot my special at the mothership, but I feel guilty about leaving you here." And she goes, "What are you gonna do? You can't change a tire. I got this." I was like, "All right, see you later." So
yeah, I don't know. I would have felt weird about leaving them too,
even
though you're in a safe
I'm in an area
space.
where I'm good.
Yeah, you're good for now. Yeah. This is the thing about LA that, there's a viral clip that's going around now of a conversation that I had with Sam Morrell a while back. And we were talking about when I was on Fear Factor, how this fireman told me that this was going to happen one day.
Yeah.
He said it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
With the right wind, he's like, we won't be able to stop it. And now that's gone viral. And then the Trump thing went viral too, because Trump was saying that they need to do something to change this. They need to clean up the forest, get rid of all the dead wood.
Yeah.
All these things could be done. Get rid of all the brush, get rid of all the dead wood, open up that fucking water from the north to come down. This idea that, do you know that the whole center of California used to be a lake?
No.
A giant lake?
No.
Bro, I found out about it about a year ago.
Really?
It's crazy. Young Jamie, wait till you see how big this fucking lake was. And all of it is all meddling and fucking around by humans.
Did I ever tell you the conversation I had with Arnold Schwarzenegger? I was with John Leguizamo.
Did he say, "Screw your freedom"?
No, he didn't say. Your freedom. This was before that. I was doing that movie.
Screw your freedom.
Screw your freedom. He said, so I'm with John Leguizamo. We were doing that movie Ride Along. And John goes, hey, stick around. We'll have some dinner with a friend of mine's coming by. I didn't know who it was. Arnold shows up with his assistant. It's kind of cool. And I'm a fan. So we're sitting there, and I had just read a book on California politics by Michael Lewis called Boomerang, about sort of like how a lot of the towns like Stockton went broke because of the pension plans and all that shit. Blah, blah, blah.
I thought it was the Diaz brothers running around slapping people.
It is that too. It is that too. It's
You find that
too.
lake?
Let me
Check
see.
this out. Look at the size of this lake. Tulare Lake.
Largest freshwater lake
Where,
west
though?
of the Mississippi.
Largest freshwater lake west of the Mississippi.
What?
It used to be fucking huge. Show a photo of what it used to look like. So it was all agriculture. They fucked it up.
Oh, because they drained it, right?
Look at the size of it.
What the
Look how big it
in
was.
the world?
Look how fucking big that is.
And now it's just gone.
Gone. Apparently it's refilling.
Well, I guess we needed it to grow all
Shut
the oranges,
the
right?
fuck up.
I mean, you know, it became.
We needed it for almonds.
For the Owens
so I can
Valley?
get almond milk. There's one amazing photograph of this guy who was squirting almond milk on the fire outside of his house because that's all he had.
Is that true?
He had 2 quarts of almond milk. There's like this soy man, this literal human water balloon.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah,
God
look
bless
at
him.
him.
God bless him. Dude, that's when you're really trying. That's
With
when you're
his
trying.
COVID mask on.
That's just a last stand, bro. That's a last stand. That's.
No, you should have been out. You got to get out of there. You got to accept it. I've been evacuated 3 times.
Have you really?
Yeah, when
Yeah,
I
I
lived in
remember
Bell
when you-
Canyon.
yeah, I remember
I got evacuated 3 times. You know, it burnt 2 houses in front in 2018. 2 houses in front of my old house were burnt to the ground.
Well, that video I showed you of my friend's house that just disappeared, and you remember I sent you that video of him driving down the PCH. Those guys are coming to my house because where I'm at is the only place that's where the air is breathable and all
Yeah,
that.
for
Well, we
now.
have a barrier between the 405 and also the airport, so we're pretty safe. Even
yeah,
here.
pretty safe. The thing about, I mean, this is from someone who's been through it a few times. You don't understand. You think it's just a fire. It's not. It's a storm.
Yeah.
So I saw fire tornadoes. Until
You
you've
did?
seen yeah, I saw fire tornadoes. When we were filming on Fear Factor, and ironically, this was the same time where this fireman was explaining to me what's going to happen in LA. We were filming Fear Factor, and when we were driving back, the entire I watched the guy die, watched the guy run across the highway and get hit by a car.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I didn't see him get hit by a car, but I saw him.
Jesus.
He was, and my producer of the show, apparently saw more. He saw like graphic. People were panicking. There was ash falling from the sky like it was snowing. It was crazy. And everyone's driving, and everyone's got this like somber, like 50-mile-an-hour driving the entire right side of the highway for an hour. Like
what?
We were
and you
filming,
can feel that heat, right?
Yeah, we were filming off the 5, so we were like way up by, like as you're heading towards
Simi Valley and stuff.
Bakerfield,
Oh, yeah.
Bakersfield, like that area. Is that off the 5 or the 10? Whatever the fuck it is. When we were pretty far away, and it was a whole hour driving back, where the whole right side of the highway was in flames. Completely engulfed, like a Lord of the Rings movie where you're waiting for Sauron to come riding on an evil horse over the top of it. It was nuts. It was fucking nuts. And you see fire tornadoes, man. The fire was fucking insane.
There's nothing you can do.
And it's flying through the air, so you're worried your car's gonna catch fire. One of the things that happens is people get stuck on highways, cars catch fire, and the fire and the winds just roll through the whole highway, and everybody burns alive inside their cars.
What?
Yeah, that happened at, what is it, the park camp? What was the big fire?
Oh, that's right.
In Northern California.
Yeah, city.
A
And they all
ton of
just
people died in their cars.
Horrifying. I got to tell you, the crazy thing about the Pacific Palisades was that 8 years ago, probably 8, maybe almost 9 years ago, I looked at houses there with my ex-wife, and we came so close to buying a house because it's such a beautiful place. We didn't buy it because it was a little too expensive, to be honest with you. It was like just a little out of our price point. But even like for a smaller house, that was expensive, right? But
Yeah,
it's
it's
beautiful
a
neighborhood. The
pricey
last
area,
thing,
but it's gorgeous.
The last thing you would ever think. The last thing is that house would burn down or there was a fire hazard, especially down like where Gelson's was or the whole town. That dude, when I'm saying the town is gone, you know the only structure that's standing is that guy Caruso, that mayor, the guy who ran for mayor, who narrowly lost to Karen Bass. He built that mall out of fire retardant material, and that's the only structures that pretty much downtown that in the town of Pacific Palisades. Frank Grillo, our buddy, his old house burned right to the ground. Just done. Just
Yeah,
gone.
Segura's house burnt to the ground.
Everybody's.
The one
Didn't
he
Mel
sold.
Gibson's?
Yeah, Mel Gibson's
Look
burnt
at
to the
that.
ground
Look
too.
at that, dude.
It's
Look at that.
insane.
Nobody in a million years. I'm telling you, no. When
That's
you bought a house there,
so
nobody said anything about fire.
crazy.
No one.
That's so. And by the way, fire insurance in LA. What? Look at that one house, perfect. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that's crazy.
What's that made out of?
I don't
The
know.
fucking-
It just the wind blew a different direction or something.
I don't know, man.
That's
I think
crazy.
it's got to be what the house is made of because that wind's blowing everywhere.
No, I don't think any house withstands that kind of fire. I think it's
Are you
just
sure?
Yeah.
How do you know? Are you a builder?
I am.
You're not a builder.
That's Brian Callender's. Nah, I don't believe anything can.
Can't you make a house out of all concrete?
It doesn't matter. The
How's
inside
that
of
one
the
house? Look at that one house. That guy.
That's
that guy
a
should
question of
play
wind,
the fucking
man.
lotto, son.
No, that's wind. Look at that though.
But here's the thing.
Look at that.
You don't want to live there now. If you're that house on the corner and everything you look at as devastation,
Well, the
you don't
schools are
want-
gone.
Right. Right. The schools are gone.
But here's my other thing. Here's the question I have. Okay, so you see that, right? Now, who is going to rebuild there, and who's gonna finance it? Are you
And
going to
then
get?
what kind of insurance?
You're not
are you
going to get
gonna be
insurance.
able to get?
So are you going to get insurance, or is a bank going to finance that? Would you want to rebuild there when you have to wait for a gas station, for a grocery store? There's nothing there.
Right.
So to me, I don't know what happens to that very valuable property.
I don't know what happens to the entire city now because people are looting like fucking crazy. Gigantic groups of 100 men organized are pulling into neighborhoods that are being evacuated, smashing through doors and pulling out TVs. There's film footage of them. There's also a bunch of people that have been caught setting fires.
Yeah, I think they should be put to death.
One guy got caught setting fires, and he had a UN debit card.
What?
And he had a bunch. I'll send it to Jamie. The guy that got arrested for, I'll tell you which fire it was, but he got arrested. He had a UN card. I'll tell you exactly.
This kind of
up.
tragedy brings out the best in people and the worst in people. The one thing it does in these communities, it brings all these people together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my buddy started to cry because I was on the phone with him. He lost everything, right? And they're going to come stay with us. And he said, when I was on the phone, these people dropped by and dropped off clothes for them. And he's got a lot of money, and he started to cry, man. He was like, I can't tell you how many people have reached out.
He had 5 cell phones and a United Nations prepaid debit card.
I'm skeptical. Is this
Of course you are.
conspiracy?
You're always skeptical.
Is this
You son of
conspiracy?
a
I just don't
bitch.
want to be played.
No, I think the New York Post did a thing about it.
You know what I mean, though? I don't want to be played. I don't know what's true
Maybe
anymore.
the New York Post didn't post that he had the debit card.
Yeah, I don't know what's
I'm getting
true
this
anymore.
from the
See?
Texas Patriot Twitter
See?
account.
You see? I told you. I'm already like, I don't know.
Jake said that the New York Post has edited the info out of the article.
Thank you.
Why? Because it's not true.
Spreading rumors, Joe
Texas
Rogan.
Patriot account said that.
Oh, so then.
Like, look at the content.
right.
You got played.
Maybe not. Maybe the New York Post are a bunch of pussies and a bunch of libtards.
The New York Post is very conservative.
They are kinda. Yeah. Yeah.
But
We'll see.
I got to tell you, I do think this is how there's a sea change here.